Is this the end of days time?
No, it's Pod Blast time. That's right, it's Pod Blast time. How you doing? I'm your host, Chance Bartels. Hope you're having a good one tonight. This is your show, your informative and hopefully fun census-shattering time capsule of memories of days gone by as we forge ahead in the game of life. This is the Nostalgia Show with a bite, as well as some feedback there. I'm Chance Bartels, your host, no relation to Chance the Rapper or the rock band Milky Chance. Sounds pretty nasty, doesn't it? We got a good one for you today, as Steve Harvey might say. That music at the very top of this edition of the Nostalgic Pod Blast, my friends, is a throwback to Star Wars Day from May 4th, as in May the 4th be with you, a play on the catchphrase, May the Force be with you, that we all first heard way back on Wednesday, May 25th, 1977, all over the world when the first Star Wars movie was released, which, of course, Star Wars Day is now in our rearview mirror until 2023 when we celebrate it all over again. Let's just decree May 2022 as Star Wars Month in Pod Blast land. That opening music is titled Duel of the Fates by John Williams, which we heard for the first time in movie theaters back on May 18th, 1999 in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, a controversial movie because so many people thought it sucked because of Jar Jar Binks and other reasons. Bad acting by little Jake Lloyd, the child actor. I don't think that's fair, but there was a lot of criticism. But that music was used in what I think was the best scene in the film, where Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, battles a demon, Darksider Darth Maul, played by Ray Park. Not to be confused with Ray Parker Jr. Do you know who Ray Parker Jr. is? Well, here, maybe this will give you a clue. Come on. No ghost. I ain't afraid of no ghost. Yeah, that was Ray Parker Jr. Ray Park, he had that cool double-edged lightsaber. You remember the movie, even if you're not a Star Wars nerd like me. You must have seen the clip. He looked like a demon. I should have held up some sort of picture for those watching in the Nostalgic Podblast YouTube channel or in the Nostalgic Podblast Facebook group. But just some quick trivia about that Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. That was the last time they used a puppet for Yoda, and then he switched 100% to a CGI being. And also it was filmed. George Lucas switched to videotape in Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. And now everything pretty much is shot digitally. There's not many movies that are still shot on film unless it's an independent film. But Ray Park, who played Darth Maul in Episode 1, a year later played Toad, an evil mutant in the very first X-Men movie in the year 2000. But I just love that John Williams Duel of the Fates music that you heard at the very beginning of this edition of the Nostalgic Podblast edition number 101. They also reused it in episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, in 2005, in that epic battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, where Anakin's body is burned up like crispy bacon by volcanic lava, and he became Darth Vader. Speaking of Obi-Wan, there's a new show everyone knows about that's about to start on Disney+. So anyway, I hope those that observed Star Wars Day had a good time. Now, I'm an original Star Wars fan, meaning I'm old as dirt, and I saw it 7 times in the movie theater in the original 1977 to 1978 theatrical run. In my collection, I collect film for old school movie projectors, like reel to reel, and I have a film print of the original theatrical version of Star Wars before it was rebranded and repackaged as Episode 4: A New Hope, which is what Lucas did in the late 70s to get ready for The Empire Strikes Back. They re-released Star Wars and then they tacked on that Episode 4: A New Hope. Back when I was 6 years old seeing it for the first time, it didn't say that. It just says Star Wars, just like my film print, which is in widescreen CinemaScope. I'll never sell it. And I have a scope print of The Empire Strikes Back as well. They're like some of my pride and joys of my film library. So they added that Episode 4: A New Hope. And then, of course, my film doesn't contain all those changes that they made in 1997. Remember, they released the special edition of the original Star Wars trilogy? Well, George Lucas and his producer, Rick McCallum, and Rick's team digitally enhanced, or ruined, if you will, depending on your point of view, the movie. And that was all designed to gear the public up for the prequels starting in 1999, in May 1999, May 18th, 99, with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. But, I'm convinced that George Lucas chose the year 1999 to have his first new Star Wars movie in theaters, first time since 1983's Return of the Jedi, as a throwback to the expensive cult British sci-fi series Space 1999, which was filmed at Pinewood Studios in England from 1973 to 1977. The pilot, or first episode, was shot in late 73, and then 2 regular seasons of 48 total episodes, including the pilot, were produced in England from 1974 until early 1977. Then they had a production hiatus in 1975 so the stars could go to America and promote the first season of Space 1999. Now, 1999, this is a little bit off topic. We'll get back on topic in just a second. I do want to say that Space 1999 heavily influenced Star Wars and Star Trek: The Next Generation. Example. Let me see if this line of dialogue sounds familiar to you. This is from the very last episode of Space 1999. This is just a couple seconds long. And let's see, where are you, my little friend? There you are. Listen to this dialogue.
Resistance is futile.
Maya, we are not going to let them take you.
Varda, thank you for demonstrating your peaceful intentions.
Commander, do as I ask, or I will be forced to demonstrate my power.
Tony, lasers.
Yes, sir. Armed surface lasers.
Resistance is futile. Surrender the Psychon.
There it is. Resistance is futile. Now, of course, we heard that, as I said, in Star Trek: The Next Generation. Here's a little clip.
We are Borg. You will be assimilated.
I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your
Futile.
life, as it has been,
You say futile, I say
is
futile.
over. From this time forward, you will service us.
So, you've probably seen it, and if you haven't, Jean-Luc Picard has taken over and made a Borg, which is like basically a robot race of androids. And that episode where you heard that line, resistance is futile, that was from the very last episode titled The Dorkons. I kid you not, it's called The Dorkons, but it's not spelled D-O-R-K like me. It's spelled D-O-R-C-O-N-S, cons, like conventions, Dorkons, but pronounced like dork. And in that final episode from 1977. This was a few months before Star Wars was released. There's a spaceship at the very start of that episode that looks very much like the Millennium Falcon. Again, months before Star Wars hit the scene. You can see those episodes of Space 1999. The guy that did the special effects, his name is Brian Johnson. He went on to do the effects for The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. He was good at making models, and I like movies these days that combine models with CGI technology. I think that's a great marriage for special effects. They just look awesome. But George Lucas had a parting of the ways with John Dykstra, who did the special effects of Star Wars. He left to do Battlestar Galactica, and there were lawsuits between 20th Century Fox, who owned Star Wars and distributed Star Wars, and Universal Studios, who produced Battlestar Galactica for television. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about Star Wars, and then we're going to get to a new Star Trek show that dropped recently in May 2022 on Paramount Plus. I'm going to analyze that for you. We're going to talk about the nostalgic treat of the week. I got a whole lot of surprises planned for you guys and gals. But let me just set the mood here as we talk briefly about Star Wars, since it is Star Wars month, as it were. I'm going to play a little bit of the Miko. Remember the disco? You may not be old like me, but for historical purposes, I'll just tell you, there was a record by Miko, M-E-C-O is how it's spelled, and it was a big, big hit. It was a 45 disco Star Wars, and that's what you can hear in the background right now. But what this is the longer version. I'm not going to play all 15 minutes. My God, it's a 15-minute version, which was released as a 33 1/3 record, like a dance version, like a dance mix of the disco Star Wars. I'll be honest with you, I like this. I know disco sucks to most people, but I kind of like it. You can hear that right there in the background. But let me just talk about my experience, because I am old as dirt. Getting back to Star Wars month, as I've coined it, I have a question for you. How and when did you first encounter Star Wars? Was it a toy, a comic book, a parody, a breakfast cereal, seeing the movie on television, seeing a Star Wars cartoon, or a movie in the theater? What's your Star Wars origin story? Please go to the Nostalgic Podblast Facebook group and tell me about it in a post where I ask you to tell your Star Wars story. And then I'll share it on the show next time. Now, as a kid in Decatur, Georgia, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now, as we're live. But the first time I had an inkling of the coming of Star Wars was way back in early 1977 when I was 6 years old. I was at a Magic Market convenience store buying candy and Topps King Kong cards. Those are like movie cards, just like baseball or football cards. Topps, the same company that made sports cards, made movie and television cards. And so I was buying King Kong cards and candy, and right next to the box of King Kong Topps cards, I see a box of something called, you guessed it, Star Wars cards. The box of movie cards showed these two strange-looking robots, which I later learned were R2-D2 and the protocol droid C-3PO. Actually, I thought C-3PO was kind of scary looking with those unblinking, lit-up, round, soulless eyes. Now, mind you, this is going way off course here, but we'll bring it back. I was still traumatized as a 6-year-old by the Westworld-like fembots on The Bionic Woman and the $6 Million Man from Halloween 1976 when I was 5 years old. So robots were like deadly enemies in my mind. And this was even before the Cylons and long before the Borg or the Terminator. But because of those damn fembots, I hated robots, so I thought they were scary. I didn't know what the Star Wars was all about. So Dad takes our family, which consists of my little sister Nicole, my mom, and I, to see Star Wars. We're a family of 4. The first weekend it was released after that Wednesday, May 25th, 1977 opening day. And man, that movie changed everything. Planet of the Apes, King Kong, $6 Million Man, all of that was now nothing to me in comparison to Star Wars. And man, I was obsessed. The Kenner toys were not released to the public until March of 1978, a full 10 months after the movie release. So what did we have? What did I have and what did we have in terms of bringing Star Wars home from the movie theater to your home so you could relive it. Well, you had the Marvel comic book adaptation, which took 6 months to be released onto stands. It was a 6-part adaptation in a monthly comic book. And the first issue was released back on Tuesday, April 12th, 1977, over 6 weeks before the movie hit cinemas on Wednesday, May 25th, 1977. In fact, the first 2 issues of 6 were on sale before the movie release. So you had all these spoilers in there in the comics. And these Marvel comic book movie adaptations illustrated a bunch of scenes that were cut from the film, such as Luke watching the space battle. Like in the comic, you see Luke Skywalker right out of the bat, right off the bat. And he's in his little binoculars that you saw. Remember when he got jumped by that Tusken Raider? He's looking through these binoculars and thing jumps up and knocks him down with a stick. Oh, that sounded dirty. That sounded pretty dirty. Anyway, he gets knocked down, knocked out. Those binoculars, he's watching the space battle at the very beginning of Star Wars when you see Princess Leia's blockade runner getting overtaken by the Star Destroyer. Well, Luke's watching that, and that was cut by Marcia Lucas, George Lucas's wife at the time. She was the editor of Star Wars. She cut that and a bunch of other scenes that were in the comic book, such as scenes with Luke and his friends, including some pretty attractive female British actresses on Tatooine, that desert planet. And the logic was, I read, Marcia Lucas only wanted Princess Leia to be, she wanted Princess Leia to be the only young, eligible female in Star Wars. And the only other female was Aunt Beru, who wasn't eligible and wasn't young, wasn't attractive. So those were the only 2 females in the original Star Wars that made the cut. But did you know Han Solo had a girlfriend in the cantina scene? Star Wars, nothing but Star Wars. In that cantina scene, there is a rather attractive chick on his lap that was cut by Marcia Lucas. And all these scenes were eventually released on Blu-ray. I love all these extra scenes. Scenes with Luke and his friend Biggs. Now, Biggs showed up in the final cut of the movie in the battle against the Death Star. And if you recall, when he's blown up, Luke is particularly moved. And it's like, why? You know, if you didn't know about the comic book or the script or the novelization by Ballantine Books, you wouldn't know who this guy was. But, man, he didn't survive the cutting room floor. Most of his scenes were scrapped. And it was kind of interesting because he explains to Luke, he's like, you need to join the rebellion. Don't wait to be drafted into the Imperial fleet. So it's like an analogy to the Vietnam War. They were drafting people to be these stormtroopers. The evil empire was drafting people. Now that contradicts later with the clones in Attack of the Clones, showing that these were actually clones. These are cloned soldiers. But I like the original concept where it's just dudes that are drafted by the empire. So anyway, getting back to what you had before, before the toys came out, you had books. And those scenes also, before released on Blu-ray, those extra scenes, which are worth a look. They're really cool scenes. They really flesh out the characters. I think it was 1997. They released it on a DVR-ROM floppy disk you could play on your computer as part of a Star Wars game. So, anyway. And the chick that played Han Solo's girlfriend, who was cut, was an actress named Jenny Cresswell, who was a featured extra on Space 1999 as an Alphan technician on what they call Moonbase Alpha. Supposedly in that show, they're storing nuclear waste on our moon, and something goes wrong, it blows up, and this is preposterous. But the moon is blown out of Earth orbit, hurling through outer space, and so Martin Landau played the commander, and they're trying to find a new planet to live on as they encounter aliens and all sorts of wonderful and terrifying things in outer space. I mean, Alien, the movie, ripped off a great episode of that show, but I'll save that for the Space 1999 Pod Blast. Okay, back to the early Star Wars merchandising before the Kenner toys. There was a cool full long play record album, not just the soundtrack. They did release the soundtrack with the John Williams music, but this was a record album titled The Story of Star Wars, which contained narration by an Alec Guinness type voice. It wasn't him, but it sounded like him narrating the record. And it had a cool little like full color booklet. I'll show it before the camera later. But it was a booklet enclosed with the record. So you could go and look through the pamphlet or the booklet with full color images from the movie as you listen to the record. And there was also a little bit of deleted audio from the movie on the record. You hear this line from a stormtrooper, "Close the blast doors," which they later reinserted into the 1997 special edition of Star Wars. That's a very minor detail, but I know some of you out there know what I'm talking about. Close the blast doors. Open the blast doors. Open the blast doors. Well, it didn't make sense in the original Star Wars. They just had open the blast doors, open the blast doors. But you didn't, they, for some reason in the audio track, that little bit of dialogue was lost, but it's on that little record album. Close the blast doors. Anyway. So before YouTube and before the interwebs, the internet, you had these record albums. And I would even sneak in a tape recorder to record audio of Star Wars as I was watching the movie, and I know I'm not the only one that did that. You had the Ballantine book novelization, which is very graphic, talking about the stormtroopers when they got shot. It was talking about bone and flesh going everywhere. It was really graphic if you read that novelization of Star Wars. And you had a hardcover book, the Star Wars Storybook, which was loaded with color photos, including one where you see C-3PO with his human hand showing, the actor Anthony Daniels. It's the scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi gives Luke his lightsaber in his little hut on Tatooine. Remember, and C-3PO says, "If you won't need him, so I'll close down for a while." And he goes, "Sure, go ahead." And so he takes like a nap. He shuts down. Well, in the photo, while Luke's holding that Jedi weapon with the blue blade, the lightsaber, right there you see C-3PO in that book sitting down, and you see a human hand. And I can't say it was a rehearsal scene because the post-production of the lit lightsaber is shown in that shot. As a kid, I thought that blooper in the book was kind of cool. And, you know, I'll show that on camera later. So, in addition to these items, there were the aforementioned Topps movie cards and stickers. Blue series, there were 5 sets by Topps. They sold really, really well that were made. There was a blue series and then a red series, meaning there's like a blue border. I'll show you later. There was a blue border around the image. Then the second series was red, then a yellow series, a green series, and then the last one was orange. And then that last set, they had rare behind-the-scenes photos. And it showed the monsters in the cantina. They'd never released any cards until that 5th series showing the creatures. I guess it was kind of like with E.T. and Spielberg. You never saw E.T., you know, in the early promotional pieces and the posters and television promotional spots. Never saw that. Anyways, I guess it was the same thing with Star Wars. They wanted to keep that a secret, those creatures in the cantina. Also on Friday, September 23rd, 1977, you know, about 4 months after release of Star Wars, on ABC TV, there was a huge, big Star Wars special with the characters from Star Wars. And I was 6 years old at the time, and I loved it. And it was actually the 3rd season premiere of the Donnie Marie Show. And I'm just going to play a brief clip of that, that Donnie Marie Show introduction. Let's see. Yes, here it is. See if I can get this going for y'all. Hey, it's Star Wars month. Cut me a break. Here we go. It's pretty corny. All right, here's the introduction. Just a little bit.
Southern skies. Have you ever noticed southern skies? Its precious beauty goes rushing to your soul like the stories told of old.
All right, that sure ain't Glenn Campbell. Let's talk over some of this. They're about to introduce the characters from Star Wars, and these were the original actors. It was Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, Kenny Baker as R2-D2, David Prowse in the Darth Vader getup. But you had weird stuff, like you had Red Fox as Obi-Wan Kenobi, obviously from Sanford and Son, one of my favorite comedians of all time, very blue comic. And then you had Chris Christopherson playing Han Solo. It was really weird, man. But it's on YouTube if you want to look it up. It's just so bizarre. It helps if you've had about a 6-pack of beer when you watch it. But on YouTube, it's titled Donnie Marie Osmond with Star Wars characters. Listen, here it is. Here's the introduction stuff.
Our guests are Red Fox, Chris Christopherson, Paul Lynde,
the Osmond brothers,
From Star Wars, R2-D2, C-3PO, Chewbacca, Darth Vader, and our own Ice Angel.
All right, I'll spare you the rest. But I do want to play this little introduction. When they later got to the actual spoof of Star Wars, they do like the opening scrawl, like in the beginning of the Star Wars movies. But listen to this. This announcer reads it, and it's kind of funny dialogue. It's so bad it's good. You know what I'm saying?
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was an evil force at work to destroy the values by which decent people lived. Values like patriotism, cleanliness, thrift, and good dental hygiene. Did the evil force win the battle? That's for us to know and you to find out.
Princess Leia, our goose is cooked unless we lift off of the star.
Luke, I know you're right, we just gotta take flight before they find out where we are.
Darth will keep searching up and down.
Oh, I can't take it. I can't take it.
Till he finds our hiding place. Before very long, they'll know we're gone. Got to get lost in space.
All right, enough. I'm going to show it for the camera. Now, if you're listening, I'm going to play some brief Star Wars soundtrack music while I show for the camera some items. I'm going to show the Topps King Kong cards briefly, the Star Wars cards. Then we're going to get on to some other stuff like Doctor Strange 2. And I just want to mention some people that passed away recently, and we'll get to the heart of this edition of the Nostalgic Pod Blast edition number 101. So let me just play some Star Wars music. I'll hold up just a couple of Star Wars items for the camera. If you're listening at fistfulofradio.com or on Apple or TuneIn, this won't mean anything to you. I would direct you to our YouTube channel, The Nostalgic Podblast, if you want to check out my stuff. But let me play a little bit of some Star Wars music as I show these items. This is from Return of the Jedi. That's the Jabba the Hutt theme. There was one Star Wars card that the pranksters at Topps Cards made, and it was not really X-rated, it was R-rated. They put a dick on C-3PO, a penis, literally a golden rod. And I'm going to hold it up for the camera. And parents saw it and complained, and so they airbrushed it back out. But there were about, 500 that were made with the penis on C-3PO, believe it or not. Holding it up for the camera now. Pretty bizarre. How could they think they could get away with that? Trying to deviants of these kids out there, perverts. So all I'm holding up are just the Blue Series set. I have all the stickers. I'm really telling on myself as being a big nerd. Not that that's a big secret. But I have all the cards, the Topps cards, the original series. I don't think you can really see them that well. But they're all there in this here book. And just like the comic book, a lot of the Topps cards showed some of those cut scenes, which were finally released on Blu-ray, as I mentioned earlier. So I hope everybody had a good Star Wars day. I'm going to wrap on this topic. But coming soon, we're going to have an episode of the Nostalgic Podblast devoted solely to Star Wars. I'll be more prepared with my visual aids. I've got a pretty good collection of this stuff, and I want to share it with you. But we'll do a show on Star Wars and Lost in Space 1999, as I call it, which will be packed with little-known information, rare audio, interviews, guests, and more. So stay tuned to the Nostalgic Podblast, wherever you find this show, be it Apple, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, TuneIn, fistfulofradio.com, podcast.co, Podcatcher, etc., etc. So, let's move on. I have a correction. I'm going to play this in the background as I talk. I made a really bad mistake last time in the Nostalgic Podblast number 100. Where I talked about Lee Major's birthday. I said it was April 24th, and shame on me. It's April 23rd. Where I went wrong was I was rushing and I relied on the internet, specifically Wikipedia, instead of my books. And so I quoted Wikipedia, which incorrectly states that Lee Majors was born on April 24th. It's April 23rd. And now his correct birthday is burned into my memory. Someone wrote to me, I'm so embarrassed because I'm a big fan of Lee Majors. I can't believe I screwed that up for all time. At least until next year. But as a punishment to myself, and unfortunately you're going to be collateral damage on this, I'm going to play Lee Majors singing a song, Lust in a Lady's Eyes. Believe it or not, I'm not kidding you not. This was the B-side. Let me get it queued up here. The B-side on his 45 release of The Unknown Stuntman, the theme to The Fall Guy. On the other side of it was this awful song. So to punish myself, I'm going to play Lee singing this terrible song from 1982. Lust in a Lady's Eyes.
She may wear subtle perfume, dress in all the classic clothes, to try and hide the fires inside she doesn't want exposed. There are certain feelings that nothing can disguise. You can always see the lust in a lady's eyes. You can always tell the difference in the way a woman speaks. Ladies choose words carefully, the others just talk cheap. And when the bedroom lights go off and words all turn to sighs, you can always see the lust in the lady's eyes. She may think she's fooling everyone, but who's got time to care? All that counts is what she feels when her heart's stripped bare. And she plays it her own life, the way an actress plays a part. But underneath there's music, 'cause she's a dancer at heart.
Yeah.
She may give a slight impression that she'll never give too much, when in truth the deepest part of her is aching to be touched. And the look on her face betrays the veil of lies. You can always see the lust in the lady's eyes.
I'm going to move on as this terrible song plays as my punishment for getting Lee's birthday wrong last time. Oh, God, it's so bad.
There's music, 'cause she's a dancer at home. She may give a slight impression that she'll never give too much, when in truth, the deepest part of her is aching to be touched, and the look on her face betrays the veil of lies. You can always see the lust in the lady.
I don't know if it's a coincidence that 1982, the year this record was released, that his marriage to Farrah Fawcett, the divorce was finalized. I don't know if there's a connection there or not. But, man, it's bad. I'm a big fan of Lee Majors, but this song sucks. Oh, brother. Okay, I got a special deal I want to tell everyone about. This is a really special, cool deal. If you're here, chances are you like nostalgia. Well, there's a monthly magazine I want to tell you about called Remind Magazine, which is just loaded with interesting articles, games, full-color photos, interviews with your favorite stars, past and present, and also interviews with creators and personalities and lots more. Remind Magazine offers a fresh take on popular entertainment from days gone by. Each issue has dozens of brain-teasing puzzles, trivia quizzes, classic comics, and monthly themed features from the 1950s through the 1990s. And the best part is it comes to you in the mail each and every month, just like the good old days when you'd wait for your favorite magazine to arrive. And this will be your new favorite magazine. Trust me. Remember Dynamite Magazine when you were a kid, or Pizzazz Magazine, Hot Dog Magazine, National Geographic's World Magazine, Boys Life Magazine, comic book subscriptions? You get the point. Well, Remind Magazine is not written for kids like those magazines were when we were growing up. Remind is written for adults while gently tapping your inner child. Your entire family will love it, and right now there's a limited time offer where you can receive Remind Magazine for just $1 stinking dollar. $1 lousy dollar per issue. And that's just $12 for an entire year. What can you get for $1 anymore? Even the dollar stores are raising their prices and changing their names of their stores. It's true. The regular price and the regular offer is $2 per issue, or $24 a year, which in itself is very reasonable. But $1 a month? That's an extremely hot deal. But you got to act fast because this offer expires soon. Here's how you can subscribe or give as a birthday or retirement gift to someone you care about. Just go to remindmagazine.com. That's remindmagazine.com, or call old school toll free 855-773-6463. That's 855-773-6463. You can order over the phone or online with a Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or Discover on their secure order page, or just give them a call. Again, that number, toll-free, is 855-773-6463, and an order specialist will assist you in processing your Remind subscription. Please mention the Nostalgic Podblast when you order. Thank you. All right, well, we're going to move on here with this 101st edition of the Nostalgic Podblast. Yes, Podblast edition number 101 is in session. Let's start with some early May music history. Okay, on Saturday, May 3rd, 1986, Dollywood Theme Park opened to the public in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, in the Knoxville Smoky Mountain Metroplex. Previously, that real estate was known as Rebel Railroad from 1961 until 1970. Then it was renamed Gold Rush Junction from 1970 to 1976, and then simply Gold Rush from 1976 to 1977, the year Star Wars was released for the first time, and then Silver Dollar City, Tennessee, from 1977 until 1985. Dollywood is owned, of course, by legendary entertainer Dolly Parton and Herschend Family Entertainment. Now, 3 million people is the average guest count per season. at Dollywood. On Monday, May 3rd, 1976, Paul McCartney made his first American stage appearance in 10 years. The Wings Over America tour began in Fort Worth, Texas. And I'm going to play a little bit of that historic concert. Just one song. It's kind of a silly song. Hint, hint. And I know our friend Al Hardy, he saw this tour, he told me, when they came to Atlanta at the Omni back in the day. Let me get this to play here. Here it is. Come on, now you...
It's understood. It's everywhere with my love. My love does it good. When the call is there, I still find something there with my love. It's understood. It's in the hands of my love. My love does it
May 3rd, 1976. Live at Fort Worth, Texas. I thought this was going to be silly love songs. That's why I said silly earlier. Well, anyway. Before I covered Doctor Strange 2 and the Multiverse of Madness and the brand new Star Trek Paramount Plus series titled Strange New Worlds, we got to talk about this. One more piece of music history. On Friday, May 7th, 1971, the Rolling Stones released Brown Sugar in the United States of America. It was the first record on their own label, Rolling Stones Records. I'm going to play a little bit of that classic tune. This is a live version from way back in 1971, performing at the Marquee Club. sounds almost like the studio version, man. Wow. 1971, that's when that song was new. That sounded just like the studio. Now, I want to talk about 4 people that passed away, and then we'll talk about Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness right after this. But let's get a little serious. 40 list. On another note, I always talk about this show. Getting back to Lee Majors, Mickey Gilley guest starred in 2 episodes of The Fall Guy, which starred Lee Majors, Doug Barr, and Heather Thomas. He was in season 1's episode Silent Partner, playing a bad guy. And he sings in that episode. He sings a song, an original song, titled I Smell a Lie. That episode aired on ABC TV on Wednesday, April 28th, 1982. Man, that was over 40 years ago on ABC, as I said. It was season 1, episode 21, 1.21. Then he came back to Fall Guy in an Elvis tribute show in season 5, in the season 5 premiere. And this time he was playing himself in an episode titled Dead Ringer I talked about with Doug Barr, where Doug sang Burning Love. He's supposed to sing it badly. Anyway, I digress. And that aired way back on Thursday, September 26th, 1985. Mickey Gilley charted 42 singles in the top 40 on the U.S. country chart. And I didn't know this until I researched tonight's show. He's a cousin of Jerry Lee Lewis and Jimmy Swaggart. I've sinned! I didn't know he was related to that. He's blood relative of Jimmy Swaggart and Carl McBoy. Let's listen to a brief interview with Mickey Gilley. This is from 2012. Let's listen to this right fast, quick. Got it right here for you, Mickey Gilley. This is a good interview with him. Boom. I hope I don't get flagged with some of the music from... They're showing clips from Urban Cowboy.
The Urban Cowboy made country music cool, a mechanical bull famous, and launched singer Mickey Gilley into superstardom.
The Urban Cowboy kicked my career in high gear and opened so many doors, it was unbelievable.
He was booked in Vegas, played at the White House, got a star on the Walk of Fame. Hollywood producers picked his nightclub for the movie after seeing an article about it in Esquire magazine. Ironically, Mickey Gilley didn't like the article.
I was disappointed in the article because I thought he was making fun of country music. Because every other word was boy meets girl, twang, twang. Boy falls in love with girl, twang, twang. You know, it was twang, twang this and twang, twang that.
But he took the twang to the bank. He had a #1 song on the movie's soundtrack, Stand By Me.
Darling, stand by me.
He rode the Urban Cowboy wave for the next 5 years.
I was traveling almost like a rock star. It was fun.
But the fun didn't last. By the mid-'80s, he was locked in a legal feud with the club's co-owner, and the hits dried up. Then, in 1989, Gilley's nightclub went up in flames.
Flames and smoke were already pouring out of Gilley's when firefighters arrived.
The famous club was gone. The soaring career stalled. But Mickey Gilley still had music in his blood. So he came here to Branson, Missouri. Branson is a mecca for live music, and Gilley opened his theater in 1990.
If I sent a rose to you.
Next door, there's Gilley's Texas Cafe with photos of the famous, the outfit he wore in Urban Cowboy, and this white leather number, Tricky on a Hot Stage.
And I would perspire.
Yeah.
It would get very, very wet and turn different colors. So.
No longer a superstar, but just happy to be performing until tragedy struck in 2009.
In a matter of just a few seconds, changed my life totally.
It was a freak accident. He fell while helping a friend move a couch in Branson. He was paralyzed from the neck down. He spent weeks at Tier Memorial Hermann in Houston and 6 months in rehab. He learned to walk again, but lost something else. You started playing the piano at age 13. So what's it like to suddenly not be able to play?
Oh, it's devastating. I mean, I got it up here, but I ain't got it down here. My hands just don't work well enough to play the piano.
Still, it's been quite a ride for the kid who grew up singing gospel in Faraday, Louisiana. Your life is like a really good country song. Heartache, love, joy, heartbreak, right?
Well, that's what country music's all about. Fighting, drinking, cheating.
Mickey Gilley, the original Urban Cowboy. Len Cannon, KHOU 11 News.
Rest in peace, Mickey Gilley. Sincerely, what a great personality and a great talent. Now for two key deaths of artists in the classic comic book realm. Neal Adams, who's in my top 3 greatest comic book artists of all time. Neal Adams was a legendary comic book artist who revitalized Batman. He died at the age of 80. And he was an influential artist who co-created some of the Dark Knight's biggest villains while also restoring the Joker to his maniacal glory. Neal Adams' wife Marilyn confirmed her husband's death on Thursday in New York following complications from sepsis, The Hollywood Reporter reported. One of the most beloved and influential comic book artists of his generation, Neal Adams also worked on runs of X-Men, which I'll show some copies of his late 1960s X-Men issues as we listen to some music. The Green Lantern, the Green Arrow, and The Flash at DC Comics during a career that spanned nearly 60 years. Neal Adams was inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Book Hall of Fame in 1998, as well as the Harvey Awards Jack Kirby Hall of Fame. The modern comic landscape would not be what it is today without the excellent work of Neal Adams, DC Comics tweeted. Neal portrayed heroes as both super and human in equal measure. His work on Batman, Green Lantern, and many more was revolutionary. DC joins the world in mourning his loss, end quote. Now, if you're listening to this episode 101 of the Nostalgic Podblast, you obviously can't see these comics, but on camera, I'm going to show you some of his classic covers of issues of not just Marvel, but some DC comics that he did the pencil artwork for. But you can see this if you want to go to the YouTube channel or the Nostalgic Podblast Facebook group. Just look for episode 101. Now let's listen to basically some generic superhero music from a movie that's been panned by critics, but I liked, with Richard Pryor and Christopher Reeve, Superman 3, as I show you some of this comic book artwork. Let's see what I do with this. Here it is. Boom. And I'm showing right now some of these X-Men issues that are actually, those are all the Neal Adams X-Men issues that he drew. And he was just one of the best artists I've ever seen in my life in terms of comic book art and art in general. But after issue 66, that was the last new edition. There's some little trivia about comic books. They went into reprints from issue 67 all the way through issue 94. And in 94, you had the new X-Men introduced. And Giant Size X-Men 1 was the first time you saw these new characters. Wolverine, Nightcrawler. You had all these different characters. But let me just show you. Let me pull up some other music here. I'll show you just a couple more comic books that Neal Adams drew. The Avengers. Now, this isn't Neal Adams art, but this is the last original issue of X-Men, issue 66. The first time that the Hulk fought the X-Men, the Incredible Hulk. And then they had reprints all the way to issue 94. Here's issue 94, the first regular issue of the X-Men with the new team, the all-new, all-different X-Men. Music, by the way, is by Ken Thorne. It's from the soundtrack of Superman 3. Now, here's the fourth and final person I want to recognize who passed away. Another beloved, famed comic book artist named George Perez passed away on Friday, May 6th, 2022. George Perez was a brilliant artist on comic books who worked primarily as a penciler. That means he would do the pencil art, and then another artist known as an inker would literally trace over the pencil artwork. And that's a typical comic book artwork team, the penciler and the inker. And then you had a colorist that would, like it sounds, that would color in the artwork, because the artwork's in black and white when it's done in pencil and in ink. But George Perez came to prominence in the 1970s, penciling the Avengers for Marvel Comics. And he returned to the franchise in the 1990s. But in between, in the 1980s, he penciled the new Teen Titans for DC Comic Books, which became one of DC's top-selling series. It was like DC's answer to the X-Men at Marvel, if you will. And I'm going to hold up before the camera some of his artwork, just like I did for Neal Adams for Equal Time. But George Perez was just iconic, just like Neal Adams was. And it's sad that these two legends died so close together, but he had been battling cancer for some time. It's just awful. And he also penciled, George Perez did, DC's landmark limited series Crisis on Infinite Earths, followed by relaunching Wonder Woman as both writer and penciler for the rebooted series. In the meantime, George Perez worked on other comics published by Marvel, DC, and other companies into the 2010s. He was known for his detailed and realistic rendering and his complex crowd scenes. Artist George Perez was born on Wednesday, June 9th, 1954, in South Bronx, New York City, New York. And sadly, George Perez died in Sanford, Florida on Friday, May 6th, 2022, from pancreatic cancer. That's also what took the life of Michael Landon, director, actor, Little Joe, in Bonanza, and of course, Little House on the Prairie, Highway to Heaven. But George Perez, that's who we're talking about right now. He was 67 years old. But his artwork, just like Neal Adams' art, will live on forever. Rest in peace. Now, briefly, let's look at some of his comic book artwork covers. If you're listening, I'm going to play this music so that it's not, a total tune out for you. This won't take long. And then we're going to play a trailer to Marvel Studios' Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness, and we'll talk about that film finally. But let's listen to a little bit of music. I'm going to show before the camera some of George Perez's classic artwork in the form of comic book covers. Rest in peace, George Perez and Neil Adams and Mickey Gilley and Naomi Judd. Now let's listen to some scenes from Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness. This is just about a minute and a half worth of scenes.
Someone once told me that the reality I thought I knew was just one of many.
Be careful which path you travel down. Stronger than you have lost their way.
You think there will be no consequences?
We're in the end game now.
I sacrificed everything. And it meant nothing.
Oh, Strange. What have you done? I never meant for this to happen.
You cannot control everything.
You brought this on yourself.
You break the rules and become a hero. I do it and I become the enemy. This doesn't seem fair.
Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, rated PG-13. Be the first to see the mind-bending phenomenon in premium large format and IMAX tomorrow.
I saw it at the AMC Parkway Point 15 in the Dolby Cinema, which costs a little extra, but it's worth it. It has dual projectors, so it's got incredible images through two projectors, and then it's got this rumbling, rousing sound. And I know my buddy and his wife, my buddy Jeff Logan, took his wife to see it Sunday, and they to that same cinema, and they were both blown away by the quality of the AMC Dolby system. It's worth every penny. So Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness finally arrived on May 5th, 2022. And of course, to people like us, it delivered what I call a geek-gasm of thrills. Now, you really need to watch the Disney Plus series WandaVision before you see this movie to fully grasp the story. But in this latest Marvel Studios spectacular, the character of Wanda, if you know the Marvel movie, she's still lost in a fantasy land she created to cope with the loss of her love, the android named Vision, which I think is bizarre. That's a bizarre couple in the first place, even going back to the comics. I mean, not to be crude, hide the kids, but it's almost like, you know, she's dating a vibrator. I mean, he's not real. I know this is comic book land, but the man's an android. I've never understood how a human being, even a witch, could fall in love with a machine. It just doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, what's going on now is, if you remember, in the movie The Avengers, The Infinity War, which is part one of the Avengers Endgame, they shot them all at the same time. It's like one giant story. Vision is killed. Doctor Strange gives Thanos the stone that's in his head, and that kills him, basically. So in WandaVision, it's really interesting. Even if you don't like comic book stuff, you've probably heard about it by now. It's been out well over a year on Disney Plus, but it starts in black and white, and it looks like an old episode of I Love Lucy, and it's a mystery that unfolds. But you really kind of need to see all the episodes of WandaVision to appreciate the story and to know really what's going on. But even if you don't have time to do that, or you don't have Disney Plus, just know that she's grieving, and she's created a fictional family, including children, like 2 little boys, that aren't real. They're not real. And so she's creating spells to live in this fantasy land and keep her fantasy going, to help her grieve with the loss. But the problem is, Wanda's delusions are now threatening the very existence of many different parallel and alternate universes. To complicate matters, a young woman is introduced to us named America Chavez, right at the beginning of the movie, who has the uncanny ability to travel into every multiverse or parallel universe, if you will. And we see Chavez, like I said, at the very start of the movie, with a version of Doctor Strange desperately trying to reach this book of spells. It's very colorful, psychedelic. You see this book in the distance, and they're trying to get to it. But then Doctor Strange wakes up in his bed. Now, was this merely a dream? And many people on the internet are saying that Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness is the darkest Marvel movie yet. That may be true, but it's not that dark, to be honest with you. Now, we do see, I'm not going to give away too many spoilers here, we do see a zombie Doctor Strange at one point towards the end of the show, which was interesting. Director Sam Raimi from Evil Dead back in the day in the late 80s, and the original Spider-Man trilogy from 2002 to 2007, starring Tobey Maguire, he did indeed add a spooky edge here, but it's not over the top or particularly gory, in my opinion. And of course, now here come some spoiler action, so if you don't want to know what's going on or haven't seen it yet, either tune out or just pause it or fast forward, but let me wait a second here for you. But there's several cameos of new Marvel characters into the movie MCU, Marvel Comics Universe. There's a group known as the Illuminati, and it's basically like a council, an all-powerful council of superheroes. And their characters such as Reed Richards, the leader of the Fantastic Four, the dude that stretches. He's kind of like Marvel's answer to Plastic Man on the DC side. But here in the movie, I didn't see this coming. I didn't know this because I didn't go in with any spoilers. I wanted just to go in blind. John Krasinski, who audiences first saw as that dopey guy on the NBC sitcom The Office, he's playing Mr. Fantastic. And Disney recently acquired, as most people know, but maybe you don't know, the 20th Century Fox film and TV library. And that includes the Fantastic Four. Fox is X-Men and Fantastic Four. And the Fantastic Four is, I think, the greatest Marvel Comics series of all time. And it really started the Marvel Comics universe in the comics back in August of 1961 when Fantastic Four issue 1 was published. Before that, you had Westerns, you had war comic books, and monster comic books. But this Fantastic Four 1 sold so well that Marvel shifted towards superheroes, introducing Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk next, Thor, which of course is part of Norse mythology, but Stan Lee and Jack Kirby made a comic book version of the God of Thunder. And anyway, so we see Reed Richards, which is pretty exciting, I think, even though, to be honest with you, I wasn't thrilled with the casting. Now, of course, John can do serious acting. We've seen that. He's proven himself. You know, he's broken typecasting. But I wish there were an unknown playing Reed Richards because he's such a key character. But anyway, we also meet a character named Black Bolt. And I'm not talking about a former Olympic track star. No, I'm talking about a Marvel Comics hero created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, first introduced in the Fantastic Four issue number 45, way back in September 1965. And this character has like a sonic voice. He can destroy or kill with his voice. And this character, and the same actor plays him. Anson Mount is playing Black Bolt, and he played the role previously in 2017 in Marvel's TV show The Inhumans, which was sort of panned by critics. But like I said, Black Bolt has a powerful voice. It can destroy or kill, and he's in the Illuminati. And then you have Captain Carter. Now, who's that? Haley Atwell plays Captain Carter. She's like a British version of Captain America. In this alternate universe, she's the one that took the serum and became basically Captain America, but she's British, so she's Captain Carter. And her shield has the British flag. Her costume has the British flag instead of the American flag. And then also you had Captain Marvel, Maria Rambeau. You might think she looks familiar. She was in the movie Captain Marvel with Brie Larson. She was her friend. If you saw that movie from 2018, she was her African-American friend, the co-pilot from the late 1980s. Well, in this universe, she got the power cosmic. So Carol Danvers didn't become Captain Marvel in the world of the Illuminati. It was her friend in the Air Force. And co-pilot Maria Rambeau, who gained the abilities of the Tesseract and the Space Stone. And then you had Baron Mordo, and also Professor X. Patrick Stewart reprised the role. Now, how many times has he been killed off now? Twice? He was killed in X3, and then in Wolverine, the R-rated Wolverine movie from 2017. But again, those were in other universes. Got it? It's kind of confusing, but the man he never dies. Professor X, he never dies. So in this story, we have a grieving and insane Wanda, who becomes the Scarlet Witch, which is her name in the comic book. She was introduced in X-Men issue 4 back in 1963. But Wanda becomes, in this movie, the Scarlet Witch, who's hell-bent on living with her two fictional fake sons who don't really exist. And by the way, someone needs to tell Doctor Strange that, really the writer, I shouldn't say Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange says it in the movie, but the writer, Michael Waldron, the term is goddamned, not goddamn. No offense, but there's a line where he says, it's a goddamn disgrace. It should be goddamned, ED. Anyway, just playing a little bit of grammar police there. Now, I found those boys that Wanda, the fictional boy she's created in her mind and her illusion, to be extremely annoying and not endearing at all. And I still don't understand why Vision is not in this fantasy world. You know, obviously it's probably due to contract reasons. Maybe they didn't want to pay Paul, the actor who plays Vision, his salary. I don't know what the reason is, but I thought it would have been more believable if Vision were in this movie, and he's not. So, spoiler alert, he's not in it. If you saw WandaVision, we're hoping Vision would return. He's not in Doctor Strange 2. Now, I like this movie very much. It's very entertaining and engaging, except for those two aspects. I couldn't stand those kids, those boys. They're so friggin' annoying. I didn't feel like passion, like usually with these movies, you do have like an emotional attachment. There's some humanity to it. And maybe I'm just missing a sensitivity chip, but I thought those kids were annoying as F. But anyway, now here's a couple brief observations. This is cool. There's a scene on one of the alternate universe planets where we see the store or a restaurant where you can relive your memories with the memory machine. What you do is you step up and stand on this round platform, and whammo, you have an instant flashback to something in your past. Well, the round gizmo or prop that the characters and actors stand on looks exactly like the round transporter circle on Star Trek, the original series, in the transporter room set of the 1960s television USS Enterprise. I mean, it's like the same prop. I don't know if that was on purpose, if that was intentional or what, just an observation. And then another highlight was a really intense battle of the Spellmasters, Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, and Doctor Strange. And what's interesting about Olsen, who plays Wanda, is that it's hard for me to grasp that she is the younger sister of the Olsen twins. I always think of her being like older, but no, she's younger than the Olsen twins. Anyway, but she plays Wanda and the Scarlet Witch, and there's a great battle scene against Doctor Strange in which a spell is cast where the weapons are musical notes. And I thought this was incredibly unique and creative. Like, you see musical note symbols hurled across the movie screen, and then you hear the sound or the music. It was really a cool combination, like piano notes, harp notes, and more. It was just a really cool creative sequence. But overall, I give Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness, I give it a 7 out of 10. Now, I'll make that a 7.5 out of 10. And the music was by Danny Elfman, who did the score for the original Batman 1989 movie, as well as most of the Tim Burton movies. And he did a good job with this film. And by the way, this is going to segue into our next topic. The first time we saw a multiverse, parallel, alternate universe in a regular show, not an anthology show, was in the original Star Trek way back in 1967 in a classic episode titled Mirror, Mirror, which aired on October 6th, 1967 on NBC. And that was the 4th episode that aired in season 2, but it was the 10th one filmed that season. Just a little bit of trivia for you. The networks always aired episodes out of order for many reasons, especially when it comes to sci-fi shows with special effects. They would air the episodes as the special effects were completed. But that was actually the 10th episode shot, but it was the 4th one that aired for season 2 of the original Star Trek Mirror, Mirror. So this is as good a time as any to transition to the next topic, and that would be this brand new show, Star Trek Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus. Let's listen to a sample of that.
Chris. I need you back, Captain.
No matter how many stars there are in the sky, no matter how many galaxies swirl beyond our own, no matter what the mathematical probabilities or the number of times we say, we are not alone in the universe. Our first visit from the stars is always the province of children's stories and science fiction. Until one day, it isn't.
So that dropped also on May 5th, the same date that Doctor Strange 2 Into the Multiverse of Madness was released in theaters. And that's a Thursday. And that's the day that new episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds will drop on Paramount Plus. And so this new show was filmed in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I half loved it. And I have some valid reasons for that, which I think. And here's why. Well, for starters, before I get into that too much detail there, I would suggest that if you have Paramount Plus, that you watch, if you're not familiar with it, the original Star Trek, which is known as Star Trek The Original Series, the 2-part episode, The Menagerie, from season 1 of the classic show. Let me just grab something here for the camera. And I'll explain why right now. Okay, I don't know if you know this, but the first pilot of Star Trek was titled The Cage, and William Shatner was not in it. It was before Captain Kirk. There were a couple captains in the Star Trek universe before Kirk. You had Robert April, and then you had Captain Christopher Pike. In the very first pilot, Captain Christopher Pike was played by Jeffrey Hunter, who was known to movie audiences in The Searchers with John Wayne, and he was in King of Kings playing Jesus Christ. He's a very, very compelling actor, and we'll talk about what happened to him in a little bit. He passed away way back in 1969. It's really sad what happened to him. But you need to see The Menagerie, the 2-part episode, if you've never seen it. because it shows what it takes place 13 years after the events of this new show, Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And something sad happens to Captain Christopher Pike that's revealed in that two-parter. So if you've never seen it, again, look at the Menagerie from the original Star Trek series, parts 1 and 2. And that two-parter used footage from that original pilot, The Cage. But instead of watching The Cage, you need to watch the Menagerie because it shows that sad fate of Captain Christopher Pike, the captain of the USS Enterprise before Captain James T. Kirk took command of that starship. So, boy, Jeffrey Hunter, just what a great actor. Like I said, he was in King of Kings in 1961. He was in The Searchers in 1956, supporting actor John Wayne, the Duke. But the Star Trek first pilot, The Cage, was filmed in 1964. And I've said this 3 times now. He's Captain Christopher Pike in this very first pilot. And some brief background on Jeffrey Hunter. He was born in New Orleans, Louisiana on November 25th, 1926. And like I said, he passed away on May 27th, 1969 at the age of 42. And here's what happened to Jeffrey Hunter, the actor. While in Spain in November 1968 to film Cry Chicago, a story about the Chicago Mafia, Jeffrey Hunter was injured in an on-set explosion when a car window near him, which had been rigged to explode outward, accidentally exploded inward. And Jeffrey Hunter sustained a serious concussion. According to Hunter's wife, Emily, he went into shock on the flight back to the United States after filming, and he couldn't speak, and he could hardly move. After landing, Jeffrey Hunter was taken to Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles, but doctors could not find any serious injuries except for displaced vertebra and a concussion. On the afternoon of May 26, 1969, Jeffrey Hunter suffered an intracranial hemorrhage while walking down a 3-stair set of steps at his home in Van Nuys, California. He fell and knocked over a planter and struck his head on the banister, fracturing his skull. He was found unconscious by Frank Bello, an actor and a friend of Jeffrey Hunter's who came for a visit. And he took him to Valley Presbyterian Hospital where he underwent brain surgery. He died at 9:30 the following morning at the age of 42. And Jeffrey Hunter's funeral was held at St. Mark's Church in Van Nuys, California on May 31st, 1969. But in Star Trek, in that 2-part episode, The Menagerie, it's explained that the handsome, strong leader, Captain Christopher Pike, was severely injured while saving children. And now, 13 years later, Pike was a quadriplegic in a futuristic wheelchair, and he's unable to speak or move. All he can do on his own power is slightly turn his wheelchair to the left or to the right and answer yes or no questions with a flashing light at the base of his wheelchair apparatus that also emits a beeping sound. Beep, beep. So in the 2-parter, which contained an updated wraparound story 13 years later, was filmed almost 2 years after the original pilot. And actor Jeffrey Hunter was not available to act in that show, in that 2-parter. All right. Gene Roddenberry had a budget crunch, so what he had to do was use that original pilot footage, and they just wrote a 2-part story around it. So there's like flashbacks in that where they just used the pilot footage, and that's the one that's got the green girl, Vina. Anyway, the green woman, she's in that. And there was another green woman later played by the season after Batman was canceled, the original Batgirl. Played another green girl that Captain Kirk had relations with in that episode, Whom Gods Destroy. But they had a look-alike actor, since Jeffrey Hunter wasn't available to do the 2-parter, and this look-alike actor was named Sean Kennedy, and he was made up with prosthetic scars and radiation skin burn damage to his face, and he was placed into that futuristic wheelchair. And this substitution worked extremely well on camera. He looked just like Jeffrey Hunter, and he was all made up, so you really couldn't tell it wasn't Jeffrey Hunter. Okay, now the reason I mention all of that before discussing this new Star Trek show on Paramount Plus called Strange New Worlds is because in this new show, Captain Pike keeps having what I call future flashes, or a future flash. It's the opposite of a flashback, in which he sees his future as a cripple. Now, how and why this is happening, we're not told. And I don't like that this was done. It felt out of place and unnecessary. Although it did look interesting seeing, the crippled Captain Pike with modern makeup and CGI, but it just made no sense whatsoever to me in terms of the story. And it happens several times where Captain Christopher Pike is haunted by his future fate in that first episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So the episode opens with a naked woman in bed. Yeah. And you cut to Captain Pike, who's on leave. He's on shore leave. And he's on a wintry-looking world in a cabin with this naked woman in a cabin. And he's making pancakes and eggs while watching the classic 1951 20th Century Fox movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, now owned by Disney, since Disney bought 20th Century Fox. And he's watching The Day the Earth Stood Still like on a modern-looking LCD TV screen in the cabin. The woman gets dressed into a Starfleet uniform and walks into the kitchen. And she's chastising Captain Pike for watching that movie again. She's like, again, Chris, really? Or words to that effect. And they talk at the dining room table, and during their conversation, this is what I didn't like. Pike's communicator device, which the woman calls a phone, and I just hate that. It was always a communicator. That little flip phone thing? She calls it a phone and not a communicator, but it beeps repeatedly, and what I don't like is Pike does not answer the communicator. I've got an issue with that. I mean, you're the captain of a ship of over 300 souls on board, and you're ignoring your summons? I mean, on leave or not, that's inconsistent of the character of an upstanding starship captain like Captain Pike, who has a stellar reputation. I mean, this Captain Pike in this new show was neglecting his duty, in my opinion. So anyway, the conversation centers around some vague traumatic event that we aren't given the details about that happened to Captain Pike and his crew before his shore leave that he's on, his vacation. And the woman leaves to report to duty since her shore leave is over, and she says to him, see you in a month. And then she's gone. So later, Pike is riding his horse in the snow, and a shuttlecraft lands, and his superior, an admiral, exits the shuttlecraft, and he says, I apologize for interrupting your vacation, but you weren't answering your phone, or communicator. And at that moment, Captain Pike learns that a first contact with aliens went wrong, and that his first officer, named Number One, that's what they call the first officer, Number One, played by Rebecca Romaine, and others, have gone missing. This character, Number One, is an original role that was played by Majel Barrett in the pilot, The Cage, and in the refurbished two-parter I talked about, The Menagerie. And she had long, dark hair, and she went on to play Nurse Chapel in the original series, and she married Gene Roddenberry. Anyway, Majel Barrett was Number One originally in the very first Star Trek pilot from 1964. I know this is confusing, especially if you've seen The Next Generation, where the bearded actor Jonathan Frakes played a character named Number One under Patrick Stewart's Captain Jean-Luc Picard. But basically, Number One means first officer or first in command next to the captain. So next, in this new show, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, we see Spock, who is now played by 36-year-old LA-born actor Ethan Peck on his home world of Vulcan, with a Vulcan babe, whom we later learn is T'Pring, the woman he was going to marry in the classic Season 2 original series episode Amok Time. And T'Pring was played by an actress, Arlene Martel, back then. And here T'Pring, get this, asks Spock to marry her. I thought you'd never ask, Spock says. And I don't like that, but what is kind of inconsistent is in the original Star Trek show, T'Pring wanted nothing to do with Spock. Let me just play a line of dialogue from that original Season 2 premiere of the old Star Trek. Let's see where I put that clip for you now. Here it is. All right, I'm having some technical issues here. I want to play this for you. There we go. what's going on is the Vulcans have this ritual called Pon farr, where they've got to mate every 7 years or they'll die trying. Like the pressures will kill them. Sounds like my sex life. I'm just kidding. But
Oh, hang on. You know what that is?
I want to prove that T'Pring wanted nothing to do with Spock. I thought it was inconsistent in this new show. She's asking Spock to marry her. Now, granted, it's 13 years before this scene I'm playing, but in this old episode, he's gone back to Vulcan to marry T'Pring, but she'll have nothing of it.
Khaleesi!
Chooses the challenge.
So she chooses to have, if you're going to reject the guy, you got to have like a battle to the death in that episode. So anyway, and then I just thought it was inconsistent writing. But in that, then I rewatched the old episode when I was preparing this Pod Blaster, at least part of it, and it kind of makes sense. I thought the writers had screwed up the continuity, but listen to this.
I see no logic in preferring Stan over me.
Yeah, she wants to get with this guy who's basically like a janitor on Vulcan. You know, he's like nothing. He's a nobody. But let's listen.
You have become much known among our people, Spock. Almost a legend. And as the years went by, I came to know that I did not want to be the consort of a legend. But by the laws of our people, I could only divorce you by the Caliphate. There was also Stan, who wanted very much to be my consort, and I wanted him. If your captain were Victor, he would not want me, and so I would have Stan. If you were Victor, you would free me because I had dared to challenge, and again I would have Stan. But if you did not free me, it would be the same, for you would be gone, and I would have your name and your property, and Stan would still be there.
Logical. Flawlessly logical.
I am honored.
Okay. So when I first watched Star Trek Strange New Worlds, I thought, okay, when she proposes to Spock and they're about to have sex in this new show, and she's all affectionate, and they almost are showing emotion. Like the guy who plays Spock is sort of smirking and stuff. So I thought, man, they're really messing up these writers of this thing. But I thought about it, and really it's not that much of a screw up if you put into context what she says there years later. So Spock is not a legend yet, 13 years prior in this new show. Okay, so that's consistent. But the good thing about Spock is he actually answers his damn communicator in this new show. When Pike summons him, right when they're about to get it on, Captain Pike calls Spock and says, "You need to report back to duty. I'm sorry to do this to you. I know you're on leave, but you got to come back to the Enterprise." Let's see, where am I? Yeah, so the writers of this new show, Akiva Goldsman and Alex Kurtzman, at first I thought they didn't do their research or know the source material, but I was wrong. I was wrong. It actually does make sense. Now let's discuss the things that I took issue with. There's about 4 main points I took issue with since I half loved this first episode of this new show on Paramount Plus, Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Gripe number 1. In the opening, the narration by Pike, you know, like Captain Kirk would say, "It's 5-year mission. To boldly go where no man has gone before." In this, it says to boldly go where no one has gone before. Now, that was a change made brilliantly to the narration in Star Trek The Next Generation back in the first episode on September 28th, 1987. And it was showing that the Trek universe had evolved. Now, that's supposed to be after Captain Kirk's time. This is before Captain Kirk. So I think, just a nitpick, but it should have said to boldly go where no man has gone before, because it was before The Next Generation. I thought it would have been bold, no pun intended, if they'd gone with the original to boldly go where no man has gone before. Gripe 2, Anson Mount, a 49-year-old actor from Mount Prospect, Illinois, plays Captain Christopher Pike. He's certainly not a bad actor, but here he's channeling Chris Pine as Captain Kirk. the current Captain Kirk in the new movie since, I guess, 2009. It's the first time that Chris Pine played Kirk. But he's acting more like Chris Pine as Captain Kirk instead of Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Christopher Pike. And also the hair and makeup of this version of Pike make the actor Anson look more like Kirk than Pike. And Anson's voice is almost exactly like Chris Pine, like I said, the current new Captain Kirk. And I just wish that Anson Mount had done a better job trying to emulate Jeffrey Hunter. Gripe number 3. In that scene I told you about where Pike is not answering his communicator, so his superior, an admiral, comes down in a shuttlecraft. Well, the shuttlecraft seen in that opening scene of Strange New Worlds, it looks more compact and sleek and more advanced than the shuttlecraft we saw in the original series, including the 2006 remastered version of the original series in which they use computers to do new special effects. I thought that wasn't consistent. Yeah, I know, I get it. In reality, there's new effects, there's new technology, but they should have made the shape of the shuttlecraft be about the same as it was in the original series, and it wasn't. It was sleeker, it was a little more thin, a little more aerodynamic than the shuttlecraft that we saw in the classic show. This is supposed to be 13 years before. Gripe 4. I mentioned that earlier. T'Pring asking Spock to marry her. I don't like it. And that's pretty much the end of my gripe list. Now here's the good. The good part of Star Trek Strange New Worlds is we meet familiar characters from the original Star Trek show, such as Uhura, as communications officer, played here by a 22-year-old actress named Celia Rose Gooding, who was born in New York City. And then we also see Nurse Christine Chappell, played by 30-year-old Jess Bush, who is an Australian actress. And the main and end title theme is decent in terms of the music, and it utilizes aspects of the original series theme by Alexander Courage, which actually wasn't that original back in 1966, since Alexander Courage took musical notes from 1964's Quinn Martin ABC TV show 12 O'Clock High, music that Dominique Frontiere scored for the Enterprise theme. You know that dun 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 dun. I'm going to do a little example for you. Here's a side-by-side. Listen to this. Listen to these musical notes, and can't you hear like the Star Trek? Even if you don't know Star Trek, you know what that sounds like. That theme, that of the spaceship. That Don. Just listen to this. This will make sense. You hear that? That is like the Star Trek theme or the Enterprise theme right there from 1964. They just added a different note. Alexander Courage added another note. Da-da, at the end of that. Here's another version of 12 O'Clock High. Listen. That's Star Trek, but it was before Star Trek. Here's the Star Trek version of the Enterprise theme 2 years later. That's from an episode, The Enemy Within, the 5th episode shot where Kirk is split into two halves, a good half and an evil half by the transporter. But moving on to discuss the new show, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, another thing I liked, it has great action and special effects in that first episode. When the USS Enterprise goes into warp speed in this new show, the special effect is much better than what I've seen before. It's not just some basic, stupid streak of light anymore. Here you're actually inside of the warp. Warp 9, Mr. Scott. It's spellbindingly cool, and it's almost like a three-dimensional effect. And there's a lot of good surprises that I won't ruin. If you're a Trekker or Trekkie, or if you just like science fiction on television, I think you'll really like it. But I will say that when Captain Pike decides to save this alien world from its own self-destruction, he violates the Federation of Planets Starfleet Command's law of non-interference and shows them the technology of Earth in the most epic way he can by decloaking the USS Enterprise in the atmosphere of that planet, like in the sky. And it's a glorious special effect. A great shot that made the hairs of my arms stand up. It was really sentimental. However, here's a gripe, a mini gripe in the original series, which supposedly takes place about 15 years later in season 3. There's a story where Kirk steals cloaking technology from the Romulans in the classic season 3 original series of Star Trek from 1968 titled The Enterprise Incident. So how could they cloak the ship here 15 years prior? That's a plot hole. But anyway, seeing that shot of the Enterprise in the clouds of that alien planet reminded me of how I felt when I first saw the classic Star Trek episode titled Tomorrow is Yesterday from season 1 of the original series, where the Enterprise goes back in time to Earth in 1966. And in the clouds, in Earth orbit, you see the Enterprise. And it's kind of a cheesy effect with the model back in 66, but I always loved that scene. And when I saw this scene where they decloak the Enterprise, I got that same feeling of geek elation that I experience. Also, the same feeling I got when I saw the Millennium Falcon in that scene on Tatooine in December 2015 while watching Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. It's just sentimental. Anyway, also on the plus side of Star Trek Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus is when Captain Pike is attempting to persuade that female leader of this world to change course, he shows her and her entire planet a video of Earth's last day. That's what he calls it, Earth's last day from the 21st century, which Pike describes as World War III. And we see images of nuclear hydrogen bombs exploding around the world, including Paris, New York City. You see the Statue of Liberty being wrecked and cut in half. Washington, D.C., and other locations around the world. And there's like this cool shot from space, from a satellite, showing the destruction around the globe. And yeah, we've seen this before in Terminator 3 and the like, but it was very well done here and was very haunting and spooky as it was intended to be. And they did a great job showing scenes of 21st century Earth, of protests, and it was fair and shows both sides politically. You have to see it to... It's not like some woke thing. It was neat. It showed both sides of protests, and it was a nice little parallel showing, hey, we're headed to World War III here if we don't change course. So Pike explains that on Earth's last day, that 30% of Earth's population died, and 600,000 species of animals and plants were destroyed by those nuclear bombs all over the world. Now, speaking of the Statue of Liberty being destroyed and attacked and cut in half, I had a flashback to this scene from 1967. Any chance I get to sneak this damn show into the pod blast, I do. Let's see if I have that clip for you here now. Yeah, this is from The Space Giants, which is a Japanese show. And here's a scene where Rodak, who's trying to take over the Earth, he's a space alien, he controls monsters and Lugomen. Just listen to this. He just destroyed and blew up the Statue of Liberty in New York.
Tallest building in the world was attacked.
The whole story.
Of course, I'm sure about the report.
Everybody's on 24 hours duty and phone back.
We're assigning everyone. As soon as possible. We'll remain here.
Yeah, we heard the story.
Citizens of New York, I am Rodak. It is my intention to own the Earth, but the Space Avenger is preventing me from doing this. My monster Vakuma has been defeated. And to punish you Earthlings, I plan to destroy New York City, and you can blame Goldar for it.
So that's it, huh? Rodak has decided to take out his anger elsewhere and demolish Manhattan to...
All right. Well, all right. Now back to the good aspects of the first episode of this new show, Star Trek Strange New Worlds. New episode streaming Thursdays on Paramount Plus. There's a surprise cameo by Kirk at the very end of the episode. Now, I'm not spoiling it because it's a fake out. Now, that's all I'll say. I thought it was clever and I liked it. So look for the surprise cameo by Kirk at the very end of the first episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Now, also, what I liked, if you know Star Trek, you know what the Prime Directive is. If you violate the Prime Directive, you're in hot water with Starfleet Command. Basically, and that's like the Starfleet Command, for those that don't know, it's the United Federation of Planets. And, it's basically the military, the Earth military that's reaching out onto these 5-year missions to reach out to other worlds. So basically, Starfleet Command has this rule, the Prime Directive in the original show, and that rule states that the Federation will not interfere with the industrial development and evolution of a planet. Well, in this episode 1, the Prime Directive is called General Order 1, and we see the origin of the name change of that order to the Prime Directive. And there's a joke about it, and there's even a line that's a bit out of place, but kind of funny, where someone says, "Screw General Order 1." I thought that was strange. I've never heard the word screw in Star Trek ever. Another on the good plus side here is Rebecca Romijn as number 1 is great. I always liked her since X-Men in 2000 as Mystique, the shapeshifter. And here in this show, she's in a long brunette wig, which takes some getting used to because you're used to seeing her with blonde hair. But I remember, and it's consistent because the role she's playing, that was played by Majel Barrett in the old show, and the Menagerie Parts 1 and 2 and The Cage, was long dark hair. So, it works. And she had a similar look in the controversial X-Men 3 The Last Stand movie in 2006, where her character Mystique, the shapeshifter, is cured of being a mutant, and she's lying there naked with shorter dark hair. So she's pulled off that look before. And as I said before, the original Star Trek show was the first American non-anthology sci-fi TV show that showed a multiverse or an alternate universe way back in 1967 in that episode titled Mirror, Mirror from Season 2 on NBC back on Friday, October 6th, 1967. Now, The Twilight Zone showed alternate universes before Star Trek in black and white, from 1959 to 1964, but that was an anthology, meaning a show with different stories and different characters each week, so I don't think that counts. If I'm wrong, write to me and let me know, but I do think that Mirror, Mirror was the first time on television in science fiction in America that you saw alternate universes in a regular show with reoccurring characters. Also in that episode, Mirror, Mirror, this is kind of twisted. It's revealed that Captain Kirk in the Mirror universe, which is a darker, evil universe, Captain Kirk assassinated Captain Christopher Pike in that alternate world so he could replace him as captain of the Enterprise. And you don't see this kill on camera back in 67 since Jeffrey Hunter wasn't available, but a talking male computer mentions it in the scene, where Kirk asks about, they're trying to learn what are we like in this universe, and he asks the computer about, the origin of Captain Kirk and how he ascended to command, and the computer's like, assassination, Captain Kirk assassinated Captain Christopher Pike. And in the good universe of Star Trek, the computer is voiced by a woman, Majel Barrett, who played Nurse Chapel in number 1 in the original pilot. I know this is hard to follow, folks. Anyone that knows Star Trek knows exactly what I'm talking about, but I know this is pretty confusing and trivial. Anyway, so basically I half loved and mostly loved Star Trek Strange New Worlds on Paramount Plus, and I will be watching it each week. I'm going to play another quick clip, different trailer of this new show, and here's some scenes from Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Bear with me, folks. Yeah, here it is. Sorry about the delay.
Hi. Sorry to interrupt.
See, that's the actor who plays Captain Pike. He sounds just like Chris Pine. Anyway.
This is your captain? Our mission. To chart the stars. Push the boundaries of what is known. what is possible.
I'm standing on the surface of a comet.
I love this job.
These people, this crew, I believe we can do anything.
You wanted to seek out new life.
Go where the aliens are.
Your presence is blasphemy.
Let's talk about this. Find some
I think that went well.
Perhaps we should kiss.
That seems logical.
Maybe we don't touch anything else. Just a suggestion.
The whole future hangs in the balance.
No one can know the future. One can only follow one's instincts.
That's the Spock character.
Our ability to work together, that's our greatest strength. Let's show them what you got.
Paramount Plus, Star Trek Strange New World. So, going to move on now, finally. Item. For months now, actually weeks and months, couple months, I've recommended the new free streaming service IMDb TV to watch your favorite classic TV shows. Well, this is pretty stupid in my opinion. They've already rebranded it, as many of you know. It's no longer IMDb TV as an international movie database, the website that's been around since 1990, I think, even when the internet was in its infancy. It's now, are you ready for this? It's called Freevee. 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 Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? I can't stand that name. IMDb had name recognition. I don't know why they changed it. Obviously, some focus group or some executive decided to change it, and I just think it's a colossal mistake. Freevee just sounds dumb. Anyway, so whenever you hear an old pod blast and I'm talking about IMDb TV, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. Now it's Freevee. Okay, item. Moon Knight finally concluded, and that is on Disney Plus. Moon Knight, as I reported to you, I think the costumes, I should say, look absolutely incredible. And some background, I mentioned this last time and the time before, but Moon Knight is a character that was first seen in comic book form in a comic book called Werewolf by Night in issue 32. Which originally was on newsstands in May of 1975. Well, now that I've seen all 6 episodes of the streaming show Moon Knight, I can report to you it was not very good. It didn't have a payoff. It has a confusing plot, silly characters like a talking ancient Egyptian rhinoceros and a crocodile or alligator. I think it's a crocodile. And there's really no real payoff for your time as a viewer. My friend and fellow Marvel Comics head and collector, Jeff, said, when I asked him his opinion of it before I watched it, what did you think of Moon Knight overall? And he said, it's shit. The problem is that the show's producers chose to use comic book source material from more recent years, which in my opinion was pretty poorly written compared to the classic stories of the mid-1970s through the early 1990s. Even if you're oblivious to the better plots, I can't understand anyone enjoying this show once you've seen the whole thing. It's not like, WandaVision where people were critical of it. Where is this going? Where's this headed? It's in black and white. It's like a sitcom. What the hell is this? And then there's a payoff. It all made sense. That's not the case with Moon Knight. It just, the acting was great, but the story sucked. As does the way it was executed, and there's a couple times where it just looked cheap to me. Like I said in an earlier episode, I think it was episode 3 of Moon Knight, it really looked like it was filmed at Disney Springs, like they're on that little boat, that little ferry boat, and it looked like they were at medieval times. The restaurant, the jousting restaurant, and the jousting scene, it just looked cheap to me. So I don't know. Moon Knight to me, it's literally and figuratively one big bad dream. Avatar Schmavatar. And that's all I got to say about that mess of a show. Moon Knight. Not good. Not one of the better ones. Item. The nostalgic automobile of the week. Well, this time it's the Ford Galaxie 500. The Ford Galaxie was a full-sized car built in the U.S. by Ford Motor Company from 1959 until 1974. And the name was used for the top models in Ford's full-size range from 1959 until 1961 in a marketing attempt to appeal to the excitement surrounding the space race. In 1962, the year of the Cuban Missile Crisis, all full-size Fords wore the Galaxy badge with 500 and 500 XL, denoting the higher series of the Galaxy. The Galaxy 500 LTD was introduced for 1965, following the Galaxy 500 7-liter in 1966. The Galaxy 500 part was dropped from the LTD in 1966 and from the XL in 1967. However, the basic series structuring levels were maintained. And I love this car. It was featured in a lot of Quinn Martin shows like The Invaders. I thought this was kind of clever. There was a show wearing an Invaders t-shirt. Now, if you're watching on video, that was a Quinn Martin show. It lasted only a couple years, but it was awesome, about this architect named David Vincent who sees a spaceship come down, and these are deadly killer beings that want to take over the Earth. It was like V with the lizard people, but long before V of 1983. That's when V first started as a miniseries on NBC. But The Invaders was just awesome, and I thought it was clever how in the pilot of The Invaders, David Vincent, it's the middle of the night, and he's on a business trip, and he's about to fall asleep at the wheel, and he's looking for a diner that has black coffee so he can wake up. And this is, this is back in 1967, filmed in late 1966, where you didn't have all night restaurants on every corner. You didn't have Waffle Houses and things like that. But he's driving a Ford Galaxie. I thought that was clever. Galaxy, like outer space. I'm going to play a couple commercials of the Ford Galaxie, but here's how the opening of The Invaders went. And here's David Vincent driving in that Ford Galaxie. Let me find this for you here. This aired on January 10th, 1967 on ABC TV. Let me get past this ad here. I should have had that pulled up for you. Shame on me. Okay, here we go. Here it is. Here's how it started.
In color. Invaders in color.
Next, The Invaders in color. Incidentally, that was a voiceover artist named Dick Wesson, who would do all of the credits where he would, not the narrator. The narrator you're about to hear is a guy named William Woodson, but Dick Wesson, like Wesson Oil, like Florence Henderson would pitch back in the day. He would do all of the credits for the guest stars of like The Fugitive and just all the main Quinn Martin shows.
Deputy, get a car. Mr. Vincent insists. Mr. Vincent is a very important citizen. Right, Mr. Vincent?
Well, seems to be Kelly's diner. You said Bud's diner.
Ready to go home now, Mr. Vincent? It came down right over here. It stretched out from about right around in through here, all the way over to here. There's trees. I recognize that tree, the evergreen. It came down right here.
It looks as if nobody's been around here for 100 years.
Ellen, I saw it. Look, I'm no crackpot. You know that.
I really saw it.
All right, David.
Why don't you play the whole thing while you're at it? Had to take a break, folks. Sorry about that. But that's how The Invaders began. And that's the extended version of the pilot titled Beachhead. And that's directly from YouTube. Someone's put it on YouTube, obviously. And it's really compelling stuff. I thought it was a great show. Didn't last very long. Only lasted for 43 episodes. But it pretty much had what I think was an ending in one of the episodes from season 2. But we'll talk about that another time. All right, item. Oh, I didn't play the Ford Galaxy ad. I want to play this kind of a cool little classic commercial from film, 16mm film. Get that for you. Here it is. Here's a 1964 commercial for the Ford Galaxy 500. It was a cool car. Get this audio.
Out of the fire of open competition, born to be beautiful. The solid, silent Super Torque Ford for 1964. This new Ford is stronger, smoother, steadier than any other car in its field. It's built for total performance. You can feel it in the way it moves out. You can feel it in the way this new Ford corners. The way it handles. The way it rides. And its extra strength means it will keep on doing these things beautifully for years to come. You must drive this one to know how much Ford has changed. Try it. Discover an exciting new world. Try total performance for a change.
And here's an ad from 1966 for the Ford Galaxy, which is no more. This is from film also. You see a guy sculpturing a car.
The shape of Ford 66. A year for quiet quality. The sculptured look for 1966 from Ford. The Galaxy 500 XL hardtop. Enter and probe the luxurious, the functional. Optional front power disc brakes. A sweepingly elegant instrument panel, recessed and padded. From a stereo tape player, you can have over 70 minutes of uninterrupted music. The sculptured look, the 66 XL hardtop. Powered by Ford, features by Ford, quiet by Ford. At your Ford dealers October 1st.
There you have it. The Ford 500. The Ford Galaxy 500. What a vehicle. Updated item for you. The Bill Murray controversy had a development. As I reported before, a movie called Being Mortal, the production was suspended due to a complaint against Bill Murray for inappropriate behavior. So I'm going to read this article. Actor and comedian Bill Murray addressed the production shutdown of his latest film, Being Mortal, in the wake of reports of a complaint against him. Fox Searchlight told the film crew in an email last month that the film was being shut down due to an unspecified complaint, but didn't confirm Murray was involved. Deadline first reported on April 20th, 2022. On Saturday, Bill Murray was attending the Berkshire Hathaway annual shareholder meeting in Omaha, Nebraska. The actor, who's a shareholder, told CNBC that he had a quote-unquote difference of opinion with the woman on the set of Being Mortal. But Murray said he was optimistic that he and the woman, whom he didn't name, could quote-unquote make peace. Quote, "We had a difference of opinion. I had a difference of opinion with a woman I'm working with. I did something I thought was funny and it wasn't taken that way," Murray said. "The company, the movie studio wanted to do the right thing, so they wanted to check it all out and investigate it, so they stopped the production. But as of now, we're talking and we're trying to make peace with each other." The nature of the complaint has not been made public, but Murray said he'd been thinking a lot about what happened And it's been, quote, quite an education, unquote, for him, according to the interview he gave CNBC. Quote, you know, what I always thought was funny as a little kid isn't necessarily the same as what's funny now. Things change and the times change, so it's important for me to figure it out, Murray said. Quote, I think the most important thing is that it's best for the other person. I thought about, and that it's not best for the other person doesn't matter what happens for me. And that gave me a great deal of comfort and relaxation because your brain doesn't operate well when you're in the unknown. When you're thinking like, well, how can I misperceive? How can I be so inaccurate and so insensitive? Unquote. When you think you're being sensitive to some sensibility that you've had for a long time, unquote. The actor who told CNBC he hopes to work out his differences with the woman and restart production of Being Mortal, quote, what would make me the happiest would be to put my boots on and for us both to go back to work and be able to trust each other and work at the best work that we both spent a lot of time developing the skill of, unquote, Murray told CNBC. And, quote, and hopefully to do something that's good for more than just the two of us, but for a whole crew of people who are movie makers and the movie studio as well, unquote. The movie featuring Bill Murray, Seth Rogen, and Keke Palmer, and directed by Aziz Ansari, is based on the nonfiction book titled Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End, according to The Hollywood Reporter. Ansari wrote the script and was also expected to play a role in the film. Searchlight Pictures has not responded to multiple requests from CNN for a comment. Now, this is me, Chance Bartels, interjecting here. In the cast, as you heard, is Keke Palmer, who sang the national anthem in Houston, Texas at the 2021 World Series, in which the Atlanta Braves defeated the Houston Astros. And also you heard in the cast is Seth Rogen. Well, you heard that a female actor made the complaint. I'm not saying it's Keke Palmer. It could have been, it might not have been, but a cool thing about Keke is that she's also going to be the new host of Password, the classic game show that NBC is bringing back to primetime starting on August 9th, 2022. And the Tonight Show host, Jimmy Fallon, is executive producing this new version of Password. My gut tells me Keke Palmer is the person who had an issue with Bill Murray, but I'm just guessing, and I certainly don't know for sure. It's just a hunch. Now, I've met Keke Palmer way back in 2011 on the set of Joyful Noise, starring Dolly Parton and Dana Owens, otherwise known as Queen Latifah, and she was fine, Keke Palmer. She's a remarkable talent as a singer and an actress, and I'll be watching her Password game show to see how she does as a game show host too. But, you know, there's different generations. You know, there's people get easily offended these days. You know, as my friend Ryan says, there's no rules in comedy, and, you know, Bill Murray's known to pull pranks on sets. It's what I've read anyway. I've never worked with him, never met him. But, you know, I'm getting a little hum there. But I don't know. I have a feeling it was Keke Palmer, but in my personal experience, she was really fine. But that was a long time ago. That was in 2011. Maybe she's gotten kind of an ego as she's sang the national anthem at the World Series and has all these opportunities. I don't know. Lighten up, Francis. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't really know. Now, item. Disney does not yet own the Sid and Marty Krofft universe, including the intellectual property of this show. Do you remember the Sid and Marty Krofft Super Show? This is from like 1976 to 1978. Well, they had all sorts of like low budget shot on videotape shows. And one of the ones that really made an impression on me was this show. Let me just play the theme song for you now. It's called Electric Woman and Dino Girl. I like this drum beat.
electro face by electro comp beware. Laurie and Judy dare to face any criminal anywhere. Electro Woman and Dinah Girl.
So you heard the lyrics there. It sounds like a big coming out party. Hiding the life she leads. But man, I love that show. There's only 8 episodes of it, but... And getting back to Disney, why would they want the world of Sid and Marty Krofft? It's kind of bad TV, really, but some Generation Xers may have a sentimental spot in their heart and mind for those shows, like Dr. Shrinker and all those shows. Anyway, I'm going to talk briefly about Electro Woman and Dinah Girl, although only on the air from 1976 to 1977 as part of that ABC TV Saturday morning program titled Sid and Marty Krofft Super Show. Lasting only 8 half-hour episodes, Electro Woman and Dinah Girl made a big impact with Generation X kids. It really did. I mean, a lot of people laugh at that claim, but it really did. You had to be at the right age, 5 years old or something, just like a little kid, like a toddler, basically. But it was kind of like a takeoff on the old Adam West Batman show. There was a cliffhanger ending, but each story was split in 2. They were like 12 minutes long. Each segment was 12 minutes, and the resolution would be another 12 minutes. So it'd be like a 24-minute story. And it would be resolved in that show later. They would play like another show in between, another Sid and Marty Krofft program. And it was just like the Adam West cliffhanger you had in the old show. And Electro Woman and Dinah Girl's opening theme was pretty catchy with a funky flair, as you just heard. And Deidre Hall played Electro Woman and Laurie. And, of course, she went on to play Marlena Evans in the NBC soap Days of Our Lives, which I think she's still on to this day. And then Judy Strangis played Dinah Girl / Judy. Norman Alden played their Electra-based technical guru, Frank Heflin. And the concept was rebooted in 2001 with an unsold pilot starring the late Marky Post as an alcoholic Electro Woman in an adult live-action version of the formula. In 2015, Electro Woman and Dinah Girl was rebooted again, starring YouTube personalities whom I've never heard of, Grace Helbig and Hannah Hart. And this new series was produced in Vancouver during February and March 2015 and was released on Tuesday, April 26th, 2016. The original Electro Woman and Dinah Girl made its debut on Saturday, September 11th of all days, 1976. But it was dropped for season 2 of the Krofft Super Show along with Dr. Shrinker, which was like their take on Land of the Giants, from what would be the final season of the Sid and Marty Krofft Super Show. Its second year for the 1977 to 1978 season. Now, Electro Woman and Dinah Girl was repackaged for reruns as part of the Krofft Superstars show in 1978. And this Dinah duo reached even more kids after its brief original Saturday morning network run through syndication. In 1997, the Columbia House Video Club released some of the original Electro Woman and Dinah Girl serials on VHS for mail subscription as part of their World of Sid and Marty Krofft, the Collector's Edition title. Now, I'm going to skip. We usually do the soundtrack. It's a new feature where I play a little bit of music from a movie and you name the movie, but I'm going to skip that because I played so much movie music. I played Superman 3 and yada, yada, yada. I played a bunch of stuff earlier tonight. So let's skip that and move along here and do another regular feature I like to cover. This is very brief.
This is Jeopardy!
Canadian champion Mattea Roach, a Tudor, was finally defeated, but not before she won 23 straight games. Well, I shouldn't say straight. She's a lesbian. Nothing wrong with that. Just saying, trying to be a little little humorous here. But she earned, get this, a total of $560,983. Congratulations to Miss Roach. I never thought I'd ever say that in a sentence. Congratulations, Miss Roach. I hate roaches. I don't mind snakes and spiders, but I do not like roaches. The current Jeopardy champ here on May 11th, 2022 is a digital marketing manager named Danielle Morar from Peachtree Corners, Georgia, near where your headquarters is of the Nostalgic Podblast. And my favorite new host of Jeopardy, Mayim Bialik, is back as host, so yay to that. But I'm sure Ken Jennings will return in due time. The nerd. The current season of Jeopardy, that's rich coming from me, right? Calling someone a nerd. The current season of Jeopardy runs through July 29th, 2022. Now, the nostalgic snack of the week. Nostalgic snack of the week. You know, I told you how I ordered the Marathon bar from England. I was going to try one. I'll go grab it in a minute. I ordered a 5-pack thinking they'd be individually wrapped, but they're all in one pack, and I didn't want to open it. But Cadbury owns the formula to the Marathon bar, which is around in the 70s to like 1981. And I was going to try it, but let's talk about this snack. I miss popcorn and bars. I posted about this in the Nostalgic Podblast Facebook group, but when I was in college in the 1990s, many bars had like popcorn machines. And, you know, you played team trivia with your buddies and you'd guzzle pitchers of beer, and I love to have popcorn with beer. I know it sounds gross to a lot of you, and a lot of you may not drink, and you're thinking, man, that's nasty, but I'm telling you, the reason they did it was obviously it would make you thirsty, so you would order more drinks. But also it would absorb the alcohol and stuff and help you sober up. But we were within walking distance of our dorm rooms or rented houses, so, you know, we weren't like drinking and driving. Anyway, the best bars, in my opinion, in the 1990s had pitchers of beer, popcorn, and a pinball machine in the corner. That's just me. Now, earlier I mentioned my question of the week, which I just posted today in our Facebook group, The Nostalgic Podblast, and I'll read your responses next time. The question is, please tell your Star Wars origin story. How or when did you first discover Star Wars? How old were you when you first heard of or saw Star Wars? What year was it? Was it a toy, a book, a comic, a cartoon, a parody, a movie on TV, or in the theater that captured your interest in Star Wars? Well, Jeff Logan, who's my buddy, replied, I remember after seeing Star Wars, my mom told me there was going to be another movie continuing the story, but it takes roughly 2 years to make a movie. And that seemed like an absolute eternity to me. Man, I hear you. And it actually was 3 years in between movies. But yeah, it would take a couple years to make it in post-production, to film the principal photography and then do post-production special effects and the like. And they were doing, before CGI, stop motion animation. There was a whole host of special effects techniques. And the puppet Yoda, for instance, in the case of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi and The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace in 1999, that was the last, did I mention this? The last filmed Star Wars movie. The rest were shot digitally, not on film at all. So we're going to start winding down the Podblast this time. Episode 101 of The Nostalgic Podblast. And it's time to just talk about a few, not many. I'm not going to turn this into the biography birthday channel, but we do have a few famous people we must acknowledge. Some living and some deceased. Let me get my music going here for birthdays. So as I always do, I like to honor some celebrity birthdays of famous folks in entertainment, sports, arts, and music, both living and no longer on Earth. And here's some from early May 2022 that I must acknowledge, and just May in general, who may have passed away. Like this gentleman, the godfather of soul, James Brown. Gonna play a performance of his, a live performance, but Got to celebrate the godfather of soul, James Brown, on his birthday, which was back on May 3rd, playing catch-up here. He was born on Wednesday, May 3rd, 1933 in Barnwell, South Carolina. James Joseph Brown was a prominent figure of 20th century music, and he really was one of the innovators of funk music. James Brown influenced the development of many music genres. He was an inductee of the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame. James Brown is ranked 7th in Rolling Stone magazine's 100 Greatest Artists of All Time list. For most of his career, James Brown had a strict drug and alcohol-free policy for any member of his entourage, including band members, and he would fire people who disobeyed orders, particularly those who used or abused drugs. Although early members of the famous Flames were fired for using alcohol, James Brown himself often served a highball consisting of Delaware Punch and moonshine at his Safe Albans Queens house in the mid-1960s. Some of the original members of James Brown's 1970s band, the JBs, including Catfish and Bootsy Collins, intentionally took the drug LSD during a performance in 1971, causing James Brown to fire them after the show because he had suspected them of being on drugs all along. James Brown sadly died of all days, Christmas Day, on Monday, December 25th, 2006, at the age of 73, from heart failure and complications from pneumonia. But let's listen to a little bit of James Brown live as we celebrate him. I love when he did the soundtrack to Rocky IV, Living in America. Let me find this for you now here. Let's listen to a little bit. And it's not Living in America from Rocky IV. Let me just find this. God dang it. Well, I'll get some feedback, y'all. Figures. Let me get past this ad, folks. You're listening to the Nostalgic Pod Blast as I struggle here live. All right, here we go. Let's listen.
For the Godfather of Soul. Well, one more time, let's bring fire back out on the stage. One more time. Payback. So right about here, ready to thank everybody out there for helping make this thing right on. But right now, you got to do just one thing for me. You help me call him out for me one time. Come on. James Brown. James Brown. James Brown. James Brown. James Brown. James Brown. James Brown.
Yeah, yeah.
James Brown. James Brown. James Brown.
Yeah. Yeah. Get up.
Rap payback.
Get on up.
Rap payback. Ha. Wow. Hitman. Hey, yeah. Hitman.
hollering because wanna fight, yeah. Don't do me, no that favor. I don't want to rock the razor. Just got with my woman, that ain't right, yeah. You hollering because wanna fight, yeah. Don't do me, no that favor. I don't know karate, but the hits, I need the hits. Give me the hits. I want the hits. Give me. Say it. Come on. Hey, hit me. Say it again. Hit me. Good God. Open up the window, man. Good funky, too funky, funky, yeah. Say it again, funky the front, funky the air. Good funky.
I think an ad is coming. Well, we're going to stop right there because an ad, come on. But God bless James Brown, the Godfather of Soul. Sorry about that feedback there. We also must acknowledge this guy who is a living legend. And by the way, that concert of James Brown I was playing some footage of was from 1981, The World of Jazz. And you could find the whole thing on YouTube. Look up James Brown live in concert 1981, World of Jazz. Going back in time to May 3rd, back on Thursday, May 3rd, 1934, that was the day that Frankie Valli was born in Newark, New Jersey. And of course, Frankie is the lead singer of the great band, The Four Seasons, who has a powerful falsetto voice. He's also known for his humanitarian efforts, and Frankie Valli was honored with the Ellis Island Medal of Honor in May 2012. Frankie Valli is now 88 years of age, and he's still performing. And I want to play a clip of Frankie Valli in The Four Seasons from 1975, performing one of their great songs. Let's see if I can get this to go for you now. Here it is.
1, 2, 3, 4. Who's gonna help you through the night? Who loves you, pretty mama? Who's always there to make it right? Who loves you, pretty baby? Who's gonna help you through the night? Who loves you, pretty mama? Who's always there to make it right? Who loves you? Who loves you, pretty baby? Who's gonna love you, mama? Who loves you, pretty baby? When tears are in your eyes and you can't find a way, it's hard to make believe you're happy when you're gray. Baby, when you're feeling like you'll never see the morning light, come to me, baby, you'll see. Who's gonna help you through the night? Who loves you, pretty mama? Who's always there to make it? Who loves you? Who loves you, pretty baby? Who's gonna love you, mama? Who loves you, pretty baby?
from 1975. Now, to the world of sports. Let me go ahead and cue this up so I don't have another lame delay like that, like I've been having all night. I want to talk about another Georgian like myself. But this guy is really special, of course. He's no longer with us. Ah, Jesus. You know what? Boy, am I making mistakes tonight. He is still... No, wait a second. He's not... Oh, jeez. Okay. I knew that. Let me start over. We're live, so I can't edit this. But this guy, he's a boxer. He was the real deal. He's considered one of the greatest boxers ever. Sugar Ray Robinson. He held a 91-fight unbeaten streak from 1943 until 1951, the third longest in the history of professional boxing. Sugar Ray Robinson was born as Walter Walker Smith Jr. on Tuesday, May 3rd, 1921, in Ailey, Georgia. Sugar Ray was known for his flamboyant and classy lifestyle outside of the ring. Sugar Ray Robinson unsuccessfully tried his hand at a career as an entertainer after retiring from boxing. Robinson sadly passed away way back on Wednesday, April 12th, 1989, at the age of 67. After his death, Sugar Ray Robinson was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990. And yes, I knew he was deceased. I made a mistake. I had a brain toot. I know that. I know you are laughing. You're laughing, thinking, what an idiot. I knew that. Let me just play a nice, brief, like less than a minute long remembrance.
Pound for pound, he was the greatest of everyone except in the ring. He was the best fighter ever lived, pound for pound.
Pound for pound. When they say Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest fighter pound for pound, meaning that I imagine he was heavyweight, fighting the same style, he'd be the greatest. I would have to admit, I would have to say yes.
He created a new place for the imagination of a fighter, the way Louis Armstrong or Frank Sinatra or Marlon Brando opened a new room in their art form.
I'm longing to see
murderous mind state. Can't keep my nine straight. Sipping on this Tennessee.
Sugar Ray Robinson. He was awesome and, oh, man, one of the best fighters of all time. Now, back to the musical side of things. This man is very much alive. Let me get the clip queued up here. I love that clip of Sugar Ray Robinson, pound for pound. Pound for pound. Okay, here we are. All right. Next up, going to May 9th now. On May 9th, Billy Joel turned 73. And he was born as William Martin Joel back on Monday, May 9th, 1949 in New York, New York. And of course, he's known as the Piano Man, one of his best songs and one of the best songs of all time. Billy Joel, of course, is a songwriter as well as a musician, and he sold more than 150 million records worldwide. And he's one of the best-selling musicians of all time. He's also the third best-selling solo artist and the sixth best-selling recording artist ever. Let's listen to a little bit of Billy Joel at Wembley Stadium in England back in 1984, singing this song. It's not Piano Man, which I know most of you would like to hear. It's Pressure.
So
I like that song, Billy Joel. Now, we're going to turn to the sports world again. And this gentleman's no longer with us, the great Tony Gwynn. And there was a really interesting commercial I liked in the early 1990s with living baseball cards. Let me get that for you now. Here they are. But I'm going to give you some information about Tony Gwynn. He was a right fielder. Let me see. Yeah, here it is. And he would have been 62 years of age today, but he was born back on Monday, May 9th, 1960 in Los Angeles, California as Anthony Keith Gwynn. He's a 15-time all-star player with well over 3,000 hits. He has 3,141 career hits with a .338 career batting average, never hitting below a .309 batting average in any full season. As well as a coaching career, Tony Gwynn excelled, and unfortunately he passed away at the age of 54 back on Monday, June 16, 2014, from cancer of a salivary gland due to years of chewing tobacco. But in happier times, here's the commercial that I just mentioned, where he's a living baseball card, and I always liked Tony Gwynn's voice. Let's see. There's a joke. I won't tell it because it would.
Trade you a Paul Molitor for Tony Gwynn.
Well, he sounds really white. I mean, I'm just kidding, being facetious, but listen to Tony Gwynn's voice here.
Trade you a Paul Molitor for Tony Gwynn. Okay.
What? I'm worth 2 Molitors. No way. This guy's been out in the sun too long. Check out the stats. .329 lifetime batting average and 4 batting titles. I was breaking World Series records when he was still a rookie.
Official Major League Baseball cards from Donruss, Fleer, Score, and Upper Deck make all your favorite players come alive.
You want a fair trade? Me for 2 of him and a Jim Abbott. Hey, I resent that.
I like his voice. He sounds kind of nerdy, Tony Gwynn, but God bless him, and he should have lived a little bit longer, you know. He should still be alive today. Tony Gwynn, what a legend. So that's a wrap on birthdays. And now it's time for my fake rant of the week. Okay. You may not remember or heard me mentioning this, but I've been liquidating a few of my feature films I have on 16mm film, my large film library, because 16mm film reel-to-reel has a mono soundtrack, and most movies, of course, are in stereo. 35mm has a stereo track. So what I've been doing is liquidating some of my films, with the exception of mega blockbuster movies like Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back that I have in scope on 16mm film, because they're the original versions. Anyway, so what I'll do is I'll buy the movie I'm selling on Blu-ray or even DVD, and then I'll move the 16mm film print out, just of the feature films. And also I'm selling extra film prints of some TV shows I have duplicates of. And this is all good stuff I'm liquidating. And same with extra copies of comic books, some of which I have 3 to 20 copies of an individual issue. Now, in addition to clearing monofilms and duplicates of films and comics, what this does for me is this revenue helps cover the day-to-day shopping inflation and the Nostalgic Pod Blast show expenses and the like, even though sponsorship is now a reality for me. Now, I have nothing against what others do to cover their expenses, if it's asking for listener donations or whatever. That's just not my style, but everyone is different, and they can do whatever they want, and that's okay, of course. As a listener, I don't like hearing a ton of ads. 3 ads per 2 hours is about all I can handle, unless the ads are entertaining or read in a humorous way, and then that's certainly tolerable. So, as I've been letting go of some of these 16mm films in my large collection on eBay, my eBay handle is Space Outer One. Well, this past week I had an encounter with a completely unreasonable buyer on eBay. This jackass takes the cake. All right, first of all, hang on a second. I had something pop up. Nope, get out of here. First of all, before this guy wins an item from me, he writes me through a private message on eBay about a day after I listed a film with Goldie Hawn and Charles Grodin, God rest his soul, and Chevy Chase, the classic comedy by Neil Simon, the playwright, Seems Like Old Times, that I have on film. And this print has a cool preview trailer before the main feature for the Cheech and Chong comedy Nice Dreams, which is my favorite Cheech and Chong movie. Anyway, this guy writes me with a private eBay message saying this, quote, "Hey, bud, will you take $100 for this?" That's the end of the message. Well, first of all, what's this bud bullshit? I really dislike it when a stranger calls me bud, like I'm a character in Father Knows Best or something. So I don't respond because I don't know how to sell an item directly. I know how to end an auction early, but eBay warns sellers not to sell items when solicited by strangers since it could be an illegitimate offer or scam. So I don't reply to the guy. Well, the auction ends with 3 people bidding on the movie, and wouldn't you know it, it turns out that this person who asked for a private sale won the item, and the guy pays. God bless America. So I ship the item, and I ship it media mail, which is the slowest way you can send something because film reels are heavy, and media mail is exactly that. It's mail designed to ship media, whether it's record albums, that's media, old school cassettes, DVDs, Blu-rays, and reel-to-reel films. So, he pays me like late on a Friday after the post office closed. I ship it the next day, Saturday, media mail. Oh, I got a hum here. Let me get rid of this. And I state in the auction it will be sent via media mail. It's stated in the auction. It's not a surprise. Well, this buyer's in Rochester, New York, so I knew I might have a problem since in my experience, due to restrictions, shipping to New York State or New York City has been the slowest shipping process yet. So, unfortunately, my concerns about this transaction would soon be confirmed. Media mail, according to the United States Postal Service, can take up to 4 to 6 weeks to arrive at the destination because the package is sent by truck, not by plane, like priority mail or express mail. It's a very slow process. And films weigh anywhere between 10 and 25 pounds, which is exactly why I chose media mail to ship it. Because also people will bid more if the shipping is either free or not expensive. That's just my experience, and I'm right. So, that was my logic because of the weight. And now when I ship comic books, I use priority mail because they don't weigh much. So anyway, the buyer pays for the shipping, and I'm trying to save them a little money. Plus, like I said, you generally get more bids if the shipping is inexpensive. Now, with media mail, there are tracking numbers, just like priority mail or express, so that both the buyer and the seller can see where the item is along the way to the destination. So as I said, I shipped Saturday morning, which happened to be, in this case, Saturday, April 16th, 2022. So a week goes by, and this buyer starts hitting the panic button. He writes me saying this, "Well, it looks like my film is stuck down there in Georgia." And I reply very kindly and courteously, and my reply to this was, "Sir, if you look at the tracking number, you can see that I shipped it promptly Saturday, April 16th, and that your item left that very post office that same day on April 16th. And I kindly, inform and remind him that media mail is the slowest form of shipping. It can take 4 to 6 weeks, worst case scenario. And that I, too, like to get my items fast and that I feel his pain." I said, "Hang in there, sir. It'll get there soon." Well, every day after that message, he sends me a message through eBay private messaging. "Well, my film isn't in the mail." Dude, the way that tracking works, the way the Postal Service works, everybody knows this, is when you look at tracking, it's scanned along the way of the shipment. If it's on truck, you're going through several states between Georgia and New York. So you got to be patient. And the way it works is you will see that it reached a distribution center along the way before it shows up in the mail. So for him to expect it each day before it's reached a processing center for the mail doesn't make any sense. And I tried to kindly explain that to him. Well, this guy doesn't like hearing that, and he gets more and more belligerent with each daily message. And he's just convinced that the film is lost down there in Georgia. And he says, "I know it's lost." And so I reply kindly, I said, "Sir, you don't know that." And I write him reminding that his item is on an 18-wheeler on the way. And then he writes me saying that he no longer wants the item and that he will send it back to me if it shows up. He just knows that it's lost, right? So that doesn't make any sense to me. So after 2 weeks, he opens a dispute with eBay because the item was not delivered. And when that happens, you're at the mercy of a robot at eBay. And after 7 days, if the item doesn't arrive, 7 days after he's opened this request for a refund, the buyer will automatically get a refund. So I call eBay, and I rather easily, surprisingly, get someone on the phone. And the eBay customer service rep tells me to call back on May 3rd and we'll extend the time allowed for the buyer to receive. May 3rd is when it would automatically close. And so I ask, well, what about overlap? Meaning, what if the clock strikes midnight and it's May 3rd and the automated system refunds the buyer before I can call in? What do you mean call on May 3rd? When on May 3rd? And she doesn't have a satisfactory answer to that question. And there's a language barrier, so I just let it go and I decide to call late on May 2nd to extend the time frame, which I do with a very nice man in the Philippines. I've always had good luck with customer service care agents located in the Philippines, whether it's an issue with Xfinity or whatever issue. I always have good luck and excellent service and care and knowledge from customer care people in the Philippines. I don't know why, I just do. So I explained to this gentleman in the Philippines who works eBay customer service that I went back to the post office, talked to the very same clerk that I shipped the film with on April 16th, and both the clerk and my local female nice letter carrier both told me just what it says in the United States Postal Service, that medium mail can take time to be delivered and just to be patient. And I communicate that to the customer. And so when I call this guy in the Philippines and I said, check the tracking, look, it's on the way. And he says he's extended the case to May 12th and to call back if it's not arrived by then. So I go to bed happy. Well, when I wake up at 8 a.m. on May 3rd, I see an email from eBay that the case is now closed and the buyer received a full refund before the film could be delivered to the guy. I about shit my pants with rage when I saw that email. I spent 30 minutes on the phone extending this case, and there's proof that I shipped it. So I immediately call eBay that morning. And they tell me they have no record of the phone conversation from the night before or the extension to May 12th. Well, wouldn't you know it, later that afternoon on May 3rd, the United States Postal Service tracking sends me an email that the film and package that I shipped arrived at Rochester, New York at the processing center. I call eBay again. I get someone in the USA. I asked this woman if I could speak to a supervisor, which she didn't seem to appreciate, but I really needed to talk to someone about this. And so I hold for about 5 minutes, and the lady kindly keeps checking on me. Sir, I'm still trying to reach a supervisor. Can you hold a minute? Yeah, sure. So eventually a man answers again in the Philippines. And I get him up to speed, tell him everything I just shared with you, and that eBay made an error refunding this guy early when it was extended. And hallelujah, he sees the record of the conversation that for some reason eBay in America couldn't see. And he sees where it was supposed to be extended to May 12th. And he can see it. So there must have been a disconnect between eBay Philippines and eBay in the USA. So I ask him to check the tracking, and he does. And he sees movement on the package and that it arrived in New York and Rochester, and it would likely be delivered on May the 4th, which it was. So the guy tells me, sir, I'm reversing the outcome of this case, and you'll get your money. If this buyer has a problem moving forward, we will refund them using eBay funds, not yours. So that was justice. Now, it's just as I told this buyer to be patient, and sure enough, it was delivered. But get this. I write the guy saying, hey, good news, it looks like your item's going to be delivered tomorrow. And this a-hole says again he's going to send it back to me. I no longer want it. And all along, I asked him to call me. I gave him my phone number, and I begged him. I said to be patient, and let's talk about this. Please be reasonable. And he says, there's no reason for us to speak. He replied both times. I offered my phone number for him to call me so we could talk about it sensibly and reasonably. And I tell him nicely, I said, sir, I have other films I'll be offering you'd likely be interested in my collection. And if you're patient, I'll unblock you from bidding. That's a nice way of saying, dude, I blocked your ass. You can't bid on anything else moving forward, but I'm willing to undo that if you're patient. Work with me. So anyway, that doesn't register with this idiot. So when I let him know that his film finally arrived in Rochester, again, he says, I'm going to refuse delivery, and I will not pay to ship it back to you. Also, I don't think there's tracking on refused delivery items. So what a jerk. And he also says, correspondence from you is no longer welcomed. And that's the last time I interacted with this ass at my end. Now, he's written me twice since then, since he told me he wants no correspondence, letting me know that he sent the film back to me. Now, what the hell is this nutbag trying to pull? Talk about an A-type personality. A for asshole. And his entire case with eBay was centered around item not received. Well, it was received. This guy's just a total douche of a buyer and, in my opinion, a bad human being. What do you mean you don't want it anymore? It's a contract between a buyer and a seller. You contract to buy, I contract to send it to you, which I did, and it arrived. Now, either way, since eBay made a mistake and did not extend the case as they promised, I'm good. But honestly, I think this buyer may be out of money on this transaction since tracking shows it was delivered. So, I mean, what a weirdo. But if the film does come back to me, I'm going to relist it and double dip, which in this circumstance is not unethical, unreasonable, or wrong. This is a rare instance for me where all's well that ends well. But again, the film isn't here yet. Okay, now calm me down, ran over. Time for the nostalgic word or expression of the week. And the nostalgic expression of the week is Red Letter Day. Have you heard that expression, a red letter day? It means you had a good day. And here's the origin of Red Letter Day. The Catholic Church used red and red text to mark special holidays and festivals on calendars, such as saints' days and things like that. And because these holidays signified feasts and other fun events, people associated days with red writing on them as good, happy days. So that's the origin. There's a Catholic aspect to the expression Red Letter Day. Now, the nostalgic treat of the week. Now, we talked about popcorn in bars, but this is a different one. Here's a candy. I'm going to play an ad for you, and I have some audio of this candy. And there's some rumors associated with this candy as well. Let me get this for you now. God, that guy burned me up on eBay. I mean, what a fool. And he lost. But listen to this commercial, folks. This is, I think, from 1979.
Visitors from outer space!
We come in peace to bring you terrific tasting Space Dust sizzling candy.
Space dust?
Wait till you experience the sizzle of galactic grape, orbiting orange, and cosmic cherry flavors.
Wow, the cherry tastes delicious! I'm sizzling great!
Space Dust sizzling candy. In your mouth, it's out of this world.
Far out!
Space Dust, available in outer space or your local store.
Now, Space Dust is also known to many of you as this. Here's another commercial from 1979.
Hey, what's happening?
The crackling's what's happening! Pop Rocks says bang to the bite! Pop Rocks! The sizzle makes you giggle! Pop Rocks! Taste that, it's straight! Pop Rocks! It's snapping! It's crackling! The crackling's what's happening! Pop Rocks!
Introducing Pop Rocks Cracklin' Candy. They'll burst all over your mouth in cherry, grape, and orange.
Pop Rocks! Taste out of sight! Pop Rocks!
The Cracklin's what's happening.
Pop Rocks. Now, that was that candy you put in your mouth and it would crackle. It's like Snap, Crackle, Pop, like the Rice Krispie Treat cereal, but it was candy and it was really cool. I got some audio of what it sounds like. Let me cue this up and I'll tell you the origin of this candy. Haven't posted about this yet, but I will in the Nostalgic Pod Blast Facebook group. Here, let me get this queued up for you now. I love this stuff. And there was always a rumor growing up, maybe you heard it, that some obese kid was eating Pop Rocks or Space Dusts and combined it with soda pop and he exploded, like his intestines exploded. Well, that's a rumor. That's not true. But I remember hearing that when I was a kid. Now listen to how this sounds in your mouth. You know what I'm talking about. You put this candy in your mouth and it crackles like this. Listen. This lady's opening the package. Listen. Bam! That was a loud one right there. Like fireworks in your mouth. Wow. Again, this is Pop Rocks or Space Dust, depending on your experience. The candy that pops in your mouth. You get the point. I think that's pretty cool. So, here's the origin of Space Dust and Pop Rocks. The concept was patented by General Foods research chemists named Leon T. Kremsner and William A. Mitchell on December 12th, 1961. But the candy was not offered to the public until 1976. Before General Foods withdrew it in 1983, citing its lack of success in the marketplace and its relatively short shelf life. It would get stale rather quickly. Distribution was initially controlled to ensure freshness, but with its increasing popularity, unauthorized redistribution from market to market resulted in out-of-date product reaching consumers. So it would be stale when people put it in their mouths. After that, Kraft Foods licensed the Pop Rocks brand to Zeta S.A., who continued manufacturing the product under Kraft's license. Eventually, Zeta became the brand's owner and sole manufacturer. Pop Rocks is distributed in the U.S. by Pop Rocks Inc. in Atlanta, Georgia, where I am at the nostalgic Pod Blast, and by Zeta, however you pronounce it, in Barcelona, Spain, to the rest of the world. And they also sell popping candy internationally under other brands, including PETA, Zetas, Whiz Fizz, and Magic Gum. In 2008, Marvin J. Rudolph, who led the group assigned to bring Pop Rocks out of the laboratory and into the manufacturing plant, wrote a history of Pop Rocks development. The book, titled Pop Rocks, The Inside Story of America's Revolutionary Candy, was based on interviews with food technologists, engineers, marketing managers, and members of Billy Mitchell's family, along with the author's experience. In the book, Rudolph points out that the Turkish company Helix, that's H-L-E-K-X, popping candy, flooded the market with popping candy in the year 2000. Conan O'Brien reference. Team Coco. A similar product called Cosmic Candy, previously called Space Dust. That's what I knew from the 1970s, the late 1970s. I remember Space Dust. But anyway, a similar product, Cosmic Candy, previously called Space Dust, was in powdered form and was also manufactured by General Foods. As described by a 1980 patent, the candy is made by dissolving sugars in water and is evaporated at 320 degrees Fahrenheit until the water content is 3% by mass. The water and sugar mixture is then cooled to 280 degrees Fahrenheit, and while being intensely stirred, it is pressurized with carbon dioxide at 730 pounds per square inch psi. The mixture is then kept under pressure and allowed to cool and solidify, embedding the carbon dioxide bubbles into the candy. The majority of the carbon dioxide bubbles are between 225 to 350 micrometers in diameter. When the pressure on the cooled and solidified candy is released, it shatters into pieces that vary in size of the rocks. Rumors persisted, this is what I was talking about a moment ago, that eating Pop Rocks and drinking soda would cause a person's stomach to boil and explode. This was in part caused by the false assumption that Pop Rocks contained an acid-base mixture such as baking soda and vinegar, which produces large volumes of gas when mixed through chewing and saliva. One of these myths involved child actor Little Mikey in the 1970s from Life Cereal, the television campaign, who was falsely rumored to have died consuming excess amounts of Pop Rocks and Coca-Cola. I remember that rumor, and I knew that was BS. Anyway, so you heard it here, folks. It's not true. Hey, Mikey, he likes it. From the Life Cereal ads, he did not die from Pop Rocks and Coca-Cola. Though the confection had been extensively tested and found safe, the carbonated candy still alarmed residents in Seattle, Washington. The Food and Drug Administration set up a hotline there to assure anxious parents that the fizzing candy would not cause their children to choke. General Foods was battling the exploding kid rumors as early as 1979. That's when I remember first hearing about it. Some kid on the schoolyard when I was 8 years old said, I'm quoting here, I remember it like it was yesterday, that a fat kid exploded drinking Coca-Cola and having Pop Rocks. General Foods sent letters to school principals, created an open letter to parents, took out advertisements in major publications, and sent the confections inventor on the road to explain that a Pop Rocks package contains less gas, namely carbon dioxide, the same gas used in all carbonated beverages, than half a can of soda. There you have it. Item. It's time for the nostalgic toy of the week. This time, it's Snap Pops or Bang Snaps. And those were one of several legal fireworks, like the snakes you would light, you would light a little capsule, a little dark capsule, and it would expand. Well, anyway, Bang Snaps are one of those legal fireworks that were a lot of fun. And they resemble little miniature onions or garlic, but you should never chew on those because Bang Snaps consist of a small amount of gravel and sand impregnated with a small quantity of silver fulminate high explosive twisted in cigarette paper. All one needs to do is simply throw the paper objects to the ground or the asphalt, which results in a sharp sound similar to a cap gun firing, creating a sulfur scent. And you can still find these to this day. And these explosive toys originated in Brazil, China, and Korea. And I love them. And you can play all sorts of pranks. Wouldn't recommend it, but a lot of people were commenting about how they put them under toilet seats, and when someone would sit on the toilet, it'd go bang. It's kind of mean. But let's see here. Let's play our weekly game as we wind down this edition of the Nostalgic Pod Blast. Shall we play a game? I'm not going to play the clip. I always play the clip from War Games. I always screw that up. But remember the movie War Games? I like that movie with Ali Sheedy and Matthew Broderick. Anyway, where he almost starts global thermal nuclear war when he taps into like NORAD's computer system. Anyway, what I like to do is just name some taglines and you come up with the product or the movie in this case. I'm going to just name some taglines of movies. So since you're not really on the phone with me here, I'm just sort of in a way talking to myself, as it were. I'm just going to wait a few seconds after I say this tagline to give you a chance to play along at home and guess what I'm talking about. So here's a movie and here's the tagline. Tagline: the happiest sound in all the world. That's The Sound of Music, perhaps the most famous musical of all time, with a movie tagline that emphasizes the genre and a desired emotional result. Tagline, here's another movie. On every street, in every city in this country, there is a nobody who dreams of being somebody. Are you intrigued? Give you some hints. Martin Scorsese and Paul Schrader's study of loneliness is a film buff favorite, starring Robert De Niro. It's Taxi Driver. And Jodie Foster was in it, and that apparently inspired that nutbag. I won't even talk about it. I don't want to get flagged by saying the guy's name. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Tagline. Here's another movie. They're young, they're in love, and they kill people. That's Bonnie and Clyde, the original from 1967, with the great Faye Dunaway. She was so sexy in that movie. I love that movie. All right. Tagline. The story of a man who is too proud to run. It's on the movie poster, folks. It's a classic. It's a Western. That's High Noon. High Noon, starring Gary Cooper. Let me find another one, a good one here. Excuse me. Let me get another classic for you. Okay. The bride, here's the tagline. The bride gets the thrills. The father gets the bills. That's Father of the Bride, the original. It's kind of dated. Kind of a dated tagline there, to say the least. This one's kind of easy. Tagline. They were 7, and they fought like 700. Part of the movie title's in that tagline. They were 7, and they fought like 700. That's the Magnificent Seven. I think I've mentioned this one before, but I'll say it again. Tagline from this movie, a classic. Some say overrated. This movie is overrated to a lot of people, but here's the tagline. A man went looking for America, and he couldn't find it anywhere. That's Easy Rider. I think I'll do one final one for you here. This is a more recent movie, but not that recent. I'll give you a hint. It's from the 1990s, the original. But all right, here's the tagline. This is so easy. For Harry and Lloyd, every day is a no-brainer. That's Dumb and Dumber. So there you have it. There's our taglines for the week. And let's see how long we've gone now. We have gone, or I have gone, 3 hours, almost 3.5 hours. So I guess I will about sign off for the week. I do appreciate each and every person. Remember to consider subscribing to Remind Magazine. And that special is going to end soon, but it's only $12 for an entire year. That's 12 monthly issues at $1 a piece. It's a steal. Go to rewindmagazine.com and please mention The Nostalgic Podblast when you subscribe. It's an awesome magazine. It would make a great gift. The summer's coming. Is good for kids as well as adults, retirees, as well as kids that are out on summer break that, you want to keep them reading, right? Not just reading on their iPad or a computer screen. Turn them on to print and let them be excited to look forward to something each month in the mail in those 3 summer months. So do that, would you please? I think it'll be a great gift and your kids will thank you for it. So I want to wish everyone a great, great rest of the week. Have a great one, and thanks for listening to The Nostalgic Podblast. And hey, if you hate Star Trek or dislike it, I hate the word hate. I dislike the word hate, I should say. I was very, very detailed in my analysis of the brand new Star Trek show this week, Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But if you know Star Trek, you know that I made some pretty valid points. I'm not patting myself on the back. It's just I know Trek because I'm a Trekker, Trekkie geek. And it's worth looking at. And the show, like I said, it's definitely more enjoyable than not. The glass is half full, and it's more than half fun. So check it out on Paramount Plus. And again, thanks for tuning in. Have a good one. Thanks.